Right last evening. Right, a 20-year-old black man died after a police officer shot him in the suburb of Brooklyn Center during a traffic stop. The Brooklyn police chief said the shooting was accidental. The officer involved intended to fire a stun gun, not a handgun, during the struggle. Tensions already high in the city of Minneapolis with the trial of former Minnesota police officer Derrick ongoing. He's charged with the murder of George Floyd last May. ESPN NBA analyst Richard Jefferson had nothing but praise for all three leagues and their decisions today when he was on the jump on ESPN television.
I applaud the league. I applaud all the sports leagues that want to take a moment and say, look, we're not in a place that we want to play a game tonight. This is something that needs to be addressed. And a lot of players that come from these communities that have seen this their entire lives, they are fed up and, they want action. And so I respect all the leagues and all the players, and I'm glad that they're being proactive as this information is coming out.
Minnesota Timberwolves president of basketball operations, Gerson Rojas, is going to join Sarah Spain and Courtney Cronin right here on ESPN Radio coming up at the bottom of the hour to discuss the Timberwolves' decision today. For the latest developments and further coverage of what's going on in Minneapolis, follow ABC News on Twitter. NBA tonight, game one of a doubleheader. Philadelphia 76ers visiting the Dallas Mavericks. Philly and Brooklyn tied atop the standings in the Eastern Conference. They're tied at 17 of the Sixers and Mavericks in the opening quarter. Golden State and Denver still to come. Lakers and Knicks tied at 23 in the first.
Tuesday, one of my favorite things. It's a mock draft day. Mel Kiper tells you who he sees going in rounds 1 and 2. We're breaking it down from every conceivable angle with me, Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
Isn't this a sports show?
A couple of things. One from Brady on YouTube says, "Oh, so weird to look at you all after all this time listening on the pod." Yeah, there's a chance you've never seen us before, and this is what we look like. 3 of the 5 hottest dudes on Twitch.
Almost entirely.
Unzip for the camera, Rudy.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Now, Beards, you did say slash and not plus. Are you only playing video games in either a hoodie or pajama pants?
I'll leave that to the imagination.
I would rather you leave less to my imagination.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I would like less imagination in this segment. I've got Beards now getting out of a bath and then Winnie the Poohing while he's playing video games on the couch. This sucks. This is a stupid, bad show, and I hate it.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Happy Monday. We've got a crew, although a slightly different one on tonight's show. We'll have a regular guest and a debut. We'll have some fun, some serious, some silly, some just a straight up NFL draft hand in the dirt conversation. I'm getting a little self-conscious about how open my shirt is on the video feed right now. I want to undo another button, but it just sort of is coming off as pretty aggressive. Yeah, I feel like buttoning it back up all of a sudden. I look stuffy now. I think I got it. I think it's really the chain that's really underneath that's peeking through. It's the chain and the chest hair that I think is making it really look like I want to sell you drugs. But I won't and I can't while I'm on the radio. Show's over at 10. If you're in the parking lot, you're in the parking lot, you know? I got G Fuel to sell you. That's pretty much it. I'm Joshua Brisco. That much clearly evident by the talk of me adjusting the button level of my Hawaiian shirt. Beards McFly on the other side of the glass, but Rudy Salazar under the weather and out of the show tonight. So we've called in, we've gone to the bullpen, we've called in a reliever, we've made a minor league call-up.
That's probably better.
Beards, how would you describe the adjustment we've made for tonight's show?
I'm trying to think if there's a good...
I think we've made the call-up.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I think, and he's still got options. He's coming up and down a few more times before we run out of options. But Tucker D. Franklin in studio with us in the Rudy chair today, and we'll be playing Rudy for the remainder of the show. Say something about Johnny Juzang.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, the disrespect! Also, Tucker, don't be afraid to get right up on that microphone. And Beards, don't be afraid to turn Rudy's microphone
I've
up
got
a little.
it turned up.
Just up a little bit farther, maybe.
I'll get it closer. close enough?
I mean, yeah, just if you stay in this range the whole time, if you're talking like you're afraid to scare a mouse, we're going to have a tough time with tonight's show. It's
We're going to be good.
It's going to be fine.
We're good.
Everything is great.
We're great.
Loving all of it. There's several things that I want to talk about in a. I'll put it this way. I think we've gotten over the course of this weekend a pretty good amount of kind of funny, silly sports nonsense. Just because of some weird stories that have happened over the last several days. And we also have not really news for the Chiefs because they still don't have a left tackle. They still have the same number of draft picks. They're in the same spots that they were whenever we were talking about it after the compensatory picks got locked in. Like we're not necessarily tilling new ground at the moment, but we are still talking about it in all the ways that sports talk radio does, where if we would have solved it 2 weeks ago, we would have lost 2 weeks of content. And I'm actually excited to talk to Tucker about all that over the course of today's show. And it will also obviously include, whenever we talk to Matt and Aaron both, we'll get into some Chiefs stuff, both the things that haven't been decided yet and the things that have in terms of what the free agencies meant, all that stuff. But as much as I do want to talk about A-Rod as quickly as possible, buying the Timberwolves, we got to talk about, there was a little piece, Beards is chuckling, because earlier I said that A-Rod bought the Mariners, which I knew was not true. It's not the same sport. It's not the same city. It's not a similar team name.
It's not the same mascot.
Tim Mariners. I think maybe that. I don't know. I know A-Rod played for the Mariners, and there were some people that were saying that maybe he wanted to move the team to Seattle, and that would be cool because he would have come up in Seattle and then brought a basketball team there. Honestly, I just think he wanted to own a sports team very badly. We can get into all that later on, and we will, because that's what today's show is going to be about. But the actual sort of news of the day that is certainly Chiefs related, Chiefs adjacent, because it's about Britt Reid. Now, we've gone over this story in a variety of forms, a variety of ways. We talked about it right before the Super Bowl as it was all happening, obviously. We talked about the legal side of it a little bit whenever we talked to Daniel Lust, a sports law expert, a couple weeks ago, week or two ago. And one of the reasons I brought it up with Dan was that there were some people asking, like, hey, hold on, what's the timeline here? Is this fishy at all? Is there something else going on here in terms of why it's taken a while for Britt Reid to be facing charges formally? The GoFundMe account set up for the 5-year-old girl who's critically injured one of their updates said, hey, please don't forget about us and this girl. Britt Reid's out, living his life. I'm paraphrasing. The thing that we got from Dan, though, the thing that Seth Kaiser tweeted about a couple of times, Real Bird Lawyer on Twitter, who is a real lawyer, also was tweeting about this. This was not just to kind of answer some questions on the front end, this was not a slower than usual process for bringing charges on a DWI. But Britt Reid has now been charged with a DWI, driving while intoxicated, from that incident that ended up wrecking a couple of cars and critically injuring the 5-year-old girl, as others at the scene were also injured. He ended up being rushed to the hospital shortly after the accident, had surgery there. We knew that. Andy Reid mentioned that after the Super Bowl, actually, which, again, I was kind of going back through a lot of this today, obviously, a little refresher and everything. And we knew it was crazy, but it's almost even crazier in retrospect to think that Andy Reid was going to either win or lose the Super Bowl, and his first post-game comments were going to have to be about a tragic accident that went really poorly and could have still gone worse. We didn't know at the time. The girl is stable now, but has suffered serious brain injuries as a result of this crash. But I'm going to read a little chunk of the original report from 41 Action News from their website. I think they had it first, at the very least. I thought they had a good summary that I'll give you now in terms of what's new today. I will say this also, Britt Reid, obviously, son of Andy Reid. I think everyone around here knows that. He was, I think, specifically outside linebackers coach, assistant coach on the defensive side in the Spags era of I think he actually may have been a defensive assistant for Sutton as well. He's been on both sides of the ball, if memory serves, and was a Chiefs assistant coach. They put him on administrative leave, and then his contract expired and was obviously not renewed. Just the point we're at right now. He is not an employee of the Chiefs, but obviously his dad is the head coach. Just a lot of layers. Here's what 41 Action News on the website had to say as the story was announced today. The Jackson County Prosecuting Attorney's Office announced Monday that Reid has been charged with a DWI, a Class D felony, with a potential jail sentence of 1 to 7 years. Prosecutors have requested a $100,000 bond. Reid, who served as outside linebackers coach on his father Andy Reid's coaching staff for the Chiefs, allegedly crashed his Dodge Ram pickup into two cars on the shoulder of the road shortly after 9 p.m. on February 4th, 3 days before the Chiefs played in Super Bowl 55, near the near entrance ramp from Stadium Drive to southbound Interstate 435 near the Truman Sports Complex. Prosecutors said they have no indication that Reid was drinking at Arrowhead Stadium. I think that phrase is interesting because it has also come up. There's a couple details of this that I think are noteworthy. Dan Wetzel tweeted out this snippet. Prosecutors say Britt Reid had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.113 and was driving 84 miles per hour, 1.9 seconds before hitting the disabled vehicle in the breakdown lane near Stadium Drive on I-435 in Kansas City. Going 84 miles on a ramp 2 seconds before you make contact. Maybe he was able to slow down some before making contact. We don't know that, but that is really, really fast, and it helps put into context the pictures that we've seen, and then also the damage done to the people involved. The Chiefs put out this statement. The Kansas City Chiefs organization remains steadfast in our concern for all who have been impacted by this tragic accident. Our prayers are focused on Ariel's name of the 5-year-old girl. Ariel's continued healing and recovery. The Chiefs are regularly in contact with the family's designated representative during this challenging time. Honestly, I mean, it's a super toothless, very bland statement that an organization makes in a situation like this. I don't necessarily know if something different should have been said there. It's a corporate statement where a bunch of lawyers are about to be involved, and also the Chiefs' role in this could get more interesting, and worse, I guess, depending on how you want to frame it. There could potentially be another level to it. More on that in a second, but I'm not. The Chiefs didn't need to necessarily do more with that, I don't think, but it also isn't exactly, some status quo resetting statement or whatever. Nate Taylor tweeted out a summary of some of the injuries to Ariel Young, the 5-year-old. He tweeted, the medical record showed that she sustained severe traumatic brain injury, left parietal fracture, brain contusions, and subdural hematomas. Brain, head, face sort of areas of injuries. The Chiefs-related thing is just that he was, as far as we could tell, I guess we don't know this necessarily, although I do think that this came up in one of the statements, but I will not say this with 100% confidence. But seems like he was leaving Arrowhead. We don't know that anyone at Arrowhead knew that he was drinking. We don't know that there were enablers or that there will ultimately be a connection to the Chiefs at this point. But with all of the different layers of, again, this happening just a minute away from the facilities, and also the fact, I mean, there's also two separate levels. One is that this is Andy Reid's kid. Kid is, son, you know what I mean? That adds just a personal level to it, but it's also a Chiefs employee. I saw somebody tweet, and I think a lot of these conversations have been spurred on really disingenuously for the sake of coming up with something, basically. But someone said, "Well, does Andy Reid? Do we connect any of this to Andy Reid or whatever?" I do think it's slightly more. There's slightly more levels to it with him being both Britt Reid's father and also boss. that I'm not sure, again, is going to that doesn't make anyone with the Chiefs, including Andy Reid, like responsible for Britt Reid's actions by any means. It's just really messy, which has been obvious from the jump. That's always where this is. I mean, this is always going to have all sorts of layers to it. But in fact, I'm going to go ahead and keep going back to Daniel Lust, who again was on the show. We mostly talked about Deshaun Watson stuff before a lot of that changed. We talked about name, image, likeness stuff. That was all interesting. If you want to hear that conversation, it's up in the podcast feed, as everything is. But what Dan had tweeted as someone who has a much better grasp on the law side of all of these things. He also hears the snippet. I'm just going to quote from Dan at Sports Law Lust on Twitter. Britt Reid admitted to police that he had left work prior to the car crash. There's now a real possibility that his employer, the Kansas City Chiefs, will get brought into a civil lawsuit by the victim, the 5-year-old girl. He has the police report. And then he tweeted, quote tweeting something from back from March, saying the doctrine of, quote, respondent superior can make an employer liable for the acts of their employees if they are performed within the course of their employment. Here, the doctrine is potentially triggered by Reid's comments and is a PR nightmare given the severity of the injuries. So I'm retweeting that one also now because I had a harder time finding it than I'd like to admit. But I did find it. I have no idea how the legal process is going to play out in terms of, is Britt Reid going to go to prison at all? Is he going to go for 7 years? Are they going to settle something civilly and maybe the criminal case doesn't end up being the focus? Will the Chiefs try to do something in terms of a settlement if they see themselves potentially being roped in at all? The issue is, it is definitely a criminal case. That's what's happening today. This isn't something that can be fully settled out of court, in my best understanding of it. But we got a little bit of, certainly not closure, because this is still a very open situation, but a little more information and a little bit more in terms of specifics today from the charges pressed against Britt Reid. Again, that he will be facing DWI charges that have a wide array of potential outcomes, even from this point forward, even as we now know more specifics today than we've known at any point up until today. So, complex as it is, multifaceted as it is, that's the news of it all today. I guess the only sort of editorializing that I'll do, and then we'll probably talk about something more fun or less unfun. It'll be interesting just to see if we get any more specifics in terms of Britt Reid leaving Arrowhead and if the Chiefs do end up being simply involved, being brought into the case in any way. I don't know that they should or shouldn't. It will just be really interesting to see where that goes. And obviously, eventually we'll get a verdict on Britt Reid, and that'll be another news story. So I don't know how often, how long we will be updating on this. Obviously, I don't know what the results will be, but that's the news of the day. So, Tucker, with your first segment in Rudy's chair here, would you like to expand on any of that, or would you like to go to break and come back and talk about offensive line play?
Well, I'm glad that you handled that because I did not want to talk about it. So,
all right, there we go. That's
let's
good.
do it.
Let's get you out of here. Little, not really a life raft. What's the little ring called? A little floaty ring.
Lifesaver.
Little light yachts. No, those are the candy.
It's the same thing.
I think it actually is.
I
got attitude with there, and I apologize. I don't know.
It's the same.
why.
It's the same. Well, hold on, listen. It's the same thing, and
An inner tube?
I've got some people to apologize for telling them to stop eating styrofoam at the pool. I had no idea. I think inner tube is probably scientific. I think they are just called lifesavers. But if you said, "Hey, do you want a lifesaver?" and I
say
said,
only the orange one, please.
I would say sure. And then if you handed me a pool floaty, I would be really unhappy.
Right, yeah.
Very let down. Is there anything? And also, the actual best lifesaver. This isn't gonna. Eventually tonight we're gonna do power rankings with Tucker. Tucker's here. We're gonna do power rankings. All right. I'm sorry, Rudy, that you're not here to do power rankings, but you should have gotten a better immune system or whatever. The best lifesaver flavor: beards,
Orange.
Tucker,
Oh gosh.
and not chlorine. We're doing the candies.
My first thought was blue.
That's fine. That's basically a flavor.
Mm-hmm.
You're both wrong, though. The best lifesaver flavor is the spearmint ones. Make your mouth feel kind of funny. Let me tell a very light story here, and then this will be our little palate cleanser, much like a spearmint lifesaver. So I said just now that spearmint lifesavers make my mouth feel a little funny, and both of you looked at me pretty confused.
Are you sure those weren't drugs?
No. Look at my shirt. Of course I'm not sure. So I had a realization last night that made me remember. So I kind of had this realization probably a couple of years ago, but it's way later in life than I think I should have had this realization. Last night, Renee and I and a couple of our friends were they brought over some ice cream from Britt Reid, which is apparently now owned by not terrible people and is reopened, and that's all great. Not an endorsement, but if they wanted to bring us ice cream, I'd eat it. And one of the ice creams was like goat cheese, apricot, walnut, which is crazy because Renee had made a goat cheese ice cream for like Easter, and I'm a pretty adventurous eater, but I don't love goat's cheese, and it was just kind of a shock to the system. But whenever the Britt Reid one came around, I was like ready for it because I had just tried. I think Renee's was honestly like was cheesier. I was gonna say it was goatier, but I really, really, really don't want to have goat-based ice cream at all. Just sort of in my mind. Also,
look, is that a hoof?
Well, here's the thing: is if you were
Man, you break your teeth on that.
if you got like an extra creamy ice cream, you wouldn't say it's cowier. You would just say it's milky or whatever, right?
By the way,
Anyway.
Goatee has a very distraught look on his face over here.
Oh yeah, we got
Yeah.
a whole goat over there. It's not made of goat. It's made of goat milk. That's how goat's cheese gets made. Anywho. But I was eating a bite of it was pretty good, by the way, the goat's cheese, apricot, walnut ice cream. And it reminded me of the fact that walnuts make my mouth feel funny. And they always have. And so if I eat like a toasted, raw, whatever, my grandparents used to have like a nutcracker. You could crack open and eat a raw walnut. From a young age, I would eat around walnuts. I like slivered almonds on some, really anything, but like on a brownie or whatever. But if someone brings a walnut brownie, I'll just eat the other one because walnuts just have a texture that then ultimately ends up making my mouth feel kind of like staticky almost. But what I definitely didn't realize until I was at least in my early 20s is that walnuts don't do that for everybody else. I had just, like, every time I explain this, people are looking at me like, wait a second. Like, yeah, you're probably just allergic to walnuts, which makes sense now. But for a long time, I just sort of assumed that walnuts just had a texture and some sort of deal with them that just made everybody's mouths feel kind of like staticky and weird and largely unpleasant. But I think I'm just allergic to walnuts. Not seriously, like I didn't break out into hives, right? They just made my mouth feel funny. Do walnuts make either of your guys' mouths feel funny?
No.
I mean, I was legally drinking before I had the thought, just the singular thought in my mind, maybe, because if you know it to be true for you, no one just ever brings up stuff like that, right?
It's like colors.
Right.
That messes me up.
Right, because if someone's like, "Oh yeah, I love," even whatever is red to you is red to you. But if I was just like, "Yeah, man, For Renee has said, this was also in her early 20s. She was eating Sour Patch Kid and just offhandedly mentioned, like, I don't want to eat anymore. They make me sweat too much. Like, what? It's like, yeah, you know how sour candy makes you sweat? And I was like, no, I don't. I most certainly don't know that because that's simply not true. I mean, most things make me sweat, but not specifically sour foods. And it's just a thing that she never realized that was unique to her. And that's, for me, that's walnuts. And maybe mint lifesavers. Is that one feels like it makes more sense, and you guys are just giving me nothing on that.
Well, they're a little chalkier. Maybe I thought that when you were talking about they make your mouth feel funny, I thought you were saying that they're just the texture, they're chalkier, and sometimes I like to grind away at them with my teeth. You know, you put them in your back molars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't put them in my back molars.
Oh, where do you grind
Sometimes,
your...
I guess sometimes I'll just kind of break them up, and maybe chomp them down a little bit.
How about that?
What can you guys think about any? Have you guys? And then we can break. Do you have any foods or anything like that that have a reaction that you've never really considered might not be normal? Because like spicy food, really spicy food makes everybody sweat a little.
Mm-hmm.
It makes your mouth hurt. So you don't ever talk about spicy. But if I would have said that in beards, you would have been like, what? Spicy food makes me have to pee really bad. We'd all be like...
That would be weird.
We'd be like... But it wouldn't be weird to you because it would have just been the life you've led this far.
Well, I will say, my girlfriend Tara found out she was allergic to avocado kind of the same way. We were one time just like eating guac, and she's like, I can't eat too much guac because it makes my mouth kind of funny. And I'm like, hang on.
Yeah! That's not universal!
Like, I love guac. I love avocados. And when we go get sushi, she'll be like, oh, I can't eat the ones with avocado because it makes my mouth tingle. I said, you are allergic to avocado, essentially. It's like then my throat starts swelling up, but I can't breathe very much. And just
No, this is normal, I swear.
And I can't figure out why all these dang millennials like avocado so much. It doesn't make any sense to me. They just make my mouth feel funny and my throat swell up. You might be allergic. Oh! Nuts. Oh, nuts. I'm allergic to the funny walnuts. Make my mouth feel funny. Let's take a break. Whenever we come back, we will probably talk about NFL draft stuff with Tucker. I want to pick his brain on a couple of things. We talked to Jordan Foote last week about a particular prospect or two that I think are kind of interesting. And at this point, we got through another weekend without the Chiefs like accidentally tripping and falling into Russell Okung and just adding him to the roster. So we'll talk with Tucker a little bit about some of the prospects coming around the corner, and also what the Chiefs are going to do leading up to the draft. Are they done? Will they make a move after the draft? They don't get a time if they like. Draft's in like 2 weeks. You guys good? Britt Reid, you good? Really probably sign a tackle. We'll talk about that whenever we come back.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
Unbutton. 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 Zip.
With Joshua Brisco. On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Tucker just showed me something alarming during the break. The first alarming thing was that I just found out that Ronald Odor is with the Yankees now, which I think I missed this weekend. I think I saw that he went somewhere. I don't know.
DFA'd.
I knew he was DFA'd because I recognized exactly maybe 0 names from that opening day Rangers roster.
Yep.
But he has a majestic beard, or had, and then signed with the Yankees, who still in the year 1940 that we're currently living in have a no facial hair policy. So he had to shave his beard. It's not quite beards. Have you seen this yet?
I have not, no.
Can you just like drop him the link or something there, Tucker?
Is
So
it,
you
did
don't have
tweet
to
it or
put it
something
up.
out?
You don't have to put it up on the feed. I just want you to see it
Okay.
because it's not quite. I think it was a TMZ story.
Yeah,
What was
TMZ
the
Sports.
headline? Can we Google it easily for beards?
MLB's Roughneck Odor shaves famous beard after trade to Yankees. I feel weird, in quotes.
It's not quite. It's not quite James Harden beardless, but it's unflattering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. Very good.
I just love the angle of that picture. I know this isn't very
It's
good for
bad
radio.
I really just wanted to get Beards'
Yeah.
beard expertise on it. But yeah, no, the picture he takes the angle at is really unflattering. He went from having
I'll go retweet it.
just a very you can go see it now at Tucker D. Franklin. There's a branding opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a very flattering look. His beard I think was well placed, and I think going to New York, this is one of those rare instances where it's bad for your brand. Because you look, I believe, as Tucker said during the break, like a child actor. Which is not what you want to do, because he's 27.
Is that all he is?
Yeah, I actually was going to guess older also, but the TMZ story says he's 27. It's a little less alarming from a more flattering angle. There's a video down there of him actually talking, and it's fine. But the original, the angle he chose is, it was a choice, and not a very good one.
I don't know if you saw when he got DFA'd, the Rangers tweeted out like it looked like a memorial thing, and it had his punch of Jose Bautista.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was
I
very,
mean,
very
name a
good.
better moment.
There's not one.
There's not one. There's absolutely not one. He's a fan favorite forever because that dude's got a right hook. I think it was a right hook. It doesn't really matter.
It sent Batista's glasses flying.
Yeah,
So good.
really strong. Anyway. I figured that we would have, I don't know why I thought this. I thought we might have something sort of new-ish to talk about for the Chiefs this week. That's not their new special teamer fullback or Austin Ryder in one multiverse to the left, which is how I refer to Austin Blythe from this point forward. Like, we can start on this part. I am so surprised that we are here on April 12th, and currently the Chiefs starting left tackle is Martinez Rankin. I just thought I would have bet and lost a lot of money that there would have been, if it's not the Joe Tooney blue chip edition, that there would have been an Austin Blythe level edition, or a Kyle Long level edition, or Mike Rimmers. I guess really if the season started today, Lucas Niang is probably your starting left tackle. Probably.
He got the arms.
Probably got those long arms, which is so important. I don't know. So Tucker, where are you at right now? Knowing that are you also equally or somewhat less surprised that we've made it this far. And also, I keep getting more surprised like every day. Because Alondra Villanueva and Russell Okung are both still out there, and maybe this is my cutoff time, and to where I should stop thinking that something is going to change. But like I was really surprised whenever we got to the end of March and they didn't have a left tackle. I'm now 12 days more surprised than that because it just keeps sort of evolving. So how do you feel about the fact that we are where we are right now with the Chiefs, specifically that left tackle spot?
Well, I think the way the situation has evolved, I'm no longer surprised that it doesn't. Like, I've prepared myself for it to be an after the draft signing.
Yeah.
I believe on May 5th, I might be wrong on this, but I think May 5th, free agent signings don't go towards compensatory selections.
That sounds close enough to being right.
That's good enough for me, I
Yep.
guess. So I expect that both those guys to sign after that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, okay, well, the Chiefs aren't going to have their left tackle. What just happened?
I'm afraid that a bird hit the window.
I think so too.
This has happened multiple times. You keep talking. I trust
Okay.
you.
Yeah, so welcome back to Almost Entirely Sports with Tucker Franklin.
Well, hold on.
No, but this is what I think, I think that they are going to draft a guy for the future. And I know that kind of sounds weird to draft a guy for the future when you don't have somebody for the now. I'm not 100% stoked on this tackle class as I once was either. So that's a little tough for me as well, because when you talk about arm length, I know that you've talked about arm length plenty. I've talked about
I
arm
want
length
to talk about
plenty.
arm length more in a second.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start that conversation then, because I think that it might not matter to you and I, but to the people calling the shots for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it matters for them. Ken Swanson did something really good diving into that.
Can't say his name on this airways, please.
Okay.
He's dead to the show, friend of the show.
Bleepson.
Bleep Blorpson sounds like an alien. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, he did something really good with arm length and looking at tackles and the decision making for the higher-ups for the Chiefs, which is honestly what matters.
Yep.
What I think doesn't really matter. But my opinion is that I don't think that arm length really matters. It's what you do with the arms that matters. But you know, if you look at Andy Reid, 34 1/4, that's the magic number right there. And you know, Lucas Niang hits that right on the money. They would kind of reinforce that whole thing. So I'm really curious to see what the Chiefs are going to do. And it's one of those things where I think about it probably way too much than I probably should.
Yeah.
But I'm not feeling as confident as I once was.
So I've looked at the patio. There is not a bird on it currently.
There wasn't a bird-shaped imprint on the glass anywhere.
Not that I saw. I wasn't looking over there whenever we heard the noise. It could have just been a wind thing or something, but it's not very windy right now. My thought, most likely, because of sort of a muffled sound, would be that perhaps a bird was coming in and then realized what was about to happen and then just had sort of a light little interaction with the window, as opposed to the numerous times, at least twice, while I've been either here or over on the other side of the glass, a bird has flown into the window hard enough to either mess up its day or end its day, and all the days after that because it died. There was a Sports Saturday or Sports Sunday that I was running the board for 4 or 5 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, probably so. 3 or 4 years ago. And a bird hit that window so hard that that bird was gone before it hit the bottom of the patio or whatever, by the bottom of the balcony. That was a TKO. That was a fatality. And then there was another day where a bird hit the window and couldn't fly, but was still out there. And it was delicious. So I would say it's kind of win-win for everybody except for the bird. Now, I think somebody ended up picking it up and taking it to like a wildlife center or something. Not the dead one. The dead one, I think, eventually may have just gotten...
That was when you ate.
I mean, it died instantly, right? So
Right.
I think it's probably still fresh. Anyway. You talked to Jim Mora Jr. on the Ref and the Kicker podcast, where you can hear Tucker every single weekday. Just subscribe to Ref and the Kicker wherever you get your podcasts. But you talked to Jim Mora Jr. About arm length specifically. I thought that whole conversation with him was really interesting. Can you explain? You say that you don't really necessarily care about it that much, but you're pretty confident that the Chiefs do. I know that is largely coming from some of the ways that Jim had framed it as a dude who's been in draft rooms and has been a decision maker both on the NFL and the college levels. So why do you think it ends up being important, and what did you take away from your conversation with Jim about it? Because I did think this was super interesting.
Yeah. I went into that conversation thinking, okay, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to have everyone be calmed down. Everyone's going to calm down after this.
Yeah.
He's going to say, oh, no, it doesn't. It matters how good they are at the position. You know, I was going to get that answer. And I asked it, and without hesitation, he said, yeah, that matters. And I went, wait, what? Like,
It's funny when that happens.
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
So I obviously had to dive into that a little bit more as the good journalist that I am.
Incredible.
So we dug into it, and it's interesting because he said, you know, you need redeeming qualities with a player. A player can have 35-inch arms, but if he can't drop step as an offensive tackle, he's essentially useless. But if
Right.
he has average feet and maybe his arms are 33 inches, not 34 and a quarter, you can say, okay, well, at least he can drop step. He's athletic enough to do it. Might not have the hands, but he's got a good punch.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, yeah, you can work with that. And that's something else I really took away from that is redeeming qualities are important with players. But if you think about the Steve Spagnuolo prototype defensive end, you might think, where's Tucker going with this? But think about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
There's a type.
Mm-hmm.
There is a type.
6'4",
Mhm.
260, 280 pounds, around that ballpark, 270 really, 34-inch arms. So if you're thinking about Steve Spagnuolo having a prototype of 34-inch arms, why would you draft a tackle that has less than 34-inch arms? If you know that other defensive edge rushers are going to have 34-inch arms, they can get into your chest really easily with 34-inch arms if you have 33, 32-inch arms. So now you have to counteract that on the offensive side. You have to say, okay, we want guys with at least 34-inch arms. We want 34 and a quarter. That's what Andy Reid likes.
Because you got to be able to get your hands on that pass rusher, or else you're bleeped.
Yeah. So that's what it's coming down to. It's kind of well, you can do this, and so, okay, we'll do that too. And I think it's a big, huge game of, you know, these edge rushers now are really good athletes. They are sometimes the best athletes on the field, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of offensive talent. But if you look at, you know, Jadeveon Clowney, who's just a specimen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, J.J. Watt's a specimen, too. He's a large human being. He might not be as fast as some of these other guys. But now you got quick guys. You got guys who are hurdle champions in college and high school, really strong athletes going on the edge rushers. And then you have these big, huge offensive linemen. You're asking them to move backwards to stop these guys getting to the quarterback. So you have to kind of have these physical traits, especially on the outside. You got to be able to widen the edge, too. That was interesting. He said length comes in many forms. Jim Moore Jr. said that. Comes in a long torso. Comes in long arms.
I think that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Long legs.
Sure. That's most of the things, right? I just think it's important to note length comes in many forms. That's all.
Does.
You can just mark all that beards. You can see if you can get anything out of that. I don't know. I like having more Tucker-based liners, and he gave us a real nugget of wisdom there.
Yep. I'm just dropping nuggets everywhere. But
I think it's really interesting because it really does seem like one of those things where if you're going, listen, if we like everything about this dude at 31, but his arms are a quarter-inch shorter than our sort of usual starting point, do we make an exception there?
Right.
It sounds insane to say, oh man, it's just if his arms are just a quarter-inch longer. But the other thing that Jim mentioned that I thought was interesting is because he was saying you can make your exceptions if you say, you know, like you're saying about all the tools, right? If everything looks good, but the arms are a little shorter than you like to be, you think, you know what, for whatever reason, I think this guy can overcome this particular measurement weakness that he's got in this spot. You can do that just sometimes. You can do that some amount. And eventually, I don't know where that line is. I don't think he even really purported to know exactly where that line is. It's probably not really consistent. But eventually, if you've made exceptions at 3 of your 5 spots at both tackle positions, all of a sudden now you're dealing with the ramifications of those because you're now at a legit disadvantage at something that is sort of, you line up against me, I line up against you, we see who's got a bigger reach. So I do think that's an interesting other little wrinkle to it where you can forego the prototype some undetermined amount. And then at some point, it also comes back to bite you.
Right. And I thought that was something I didn't really even think about either. Because it seems like it's a very simple thing when you talk about arm length, right? So you have a long arms or you don't.
Right.
It matters or it doesn't. But then when you start thinking about it, okay, if you allow these guys, I think Cam Irving and Mike Rimmers are the only tackles to play for Andy Reid that have had under 34.25-inch arms. Those are the only 2 tackles to do it. And when you start looking at that and you realize, okay, he hasn't really wavered from this prototype of arm length. Look at the success that he's had on the offensive line. He's had some pretty good offensive lines in his career.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, you think, okay, and if you allow so many exceptions, and like I mentioned earlier, like this wasn't even something that even crossed my mind of, okay, yeah, you allow 1 exception, then you allow 2, you allow 3, then you're playing with a bunch of players that you don't really like in total, and then you're playing with a bunch of players that don't really have your prototype, and I think that that's going to be really interesting coming up at pick number 31, because when you look at this tackle class, I had a good conversation with Bleepson about this, and we said that it became a really good tackle class, right? It was a really good tackle class coming into an elite guard class. If you look at all of these tackles that have come in, and you look at the arm length, you've got a ton of guys in the top 20 that have tackle length or guard length arms.
I think it was Sam Hayes and his historian Arrowhead report. It's all in the family, baby. It's all we're the royal family up in here. We're all related and we're all kissing. What? R.I.P. Prince Philip. But I think Sam was the one who wrote that of like the guy of the tackle class with the arm length is also the guy probably least likely to actually play tackle among that group at the NFL level, being Alex Leatherwood. Is that correct? Yeah. Is that okay? I want to make sure. I believe that Sam's work was right. I was concerned that my memory might not be. So like that just it would be one of several reasons that I would have liked the Chiefs to have signed a competent tackle at this point. We got to take a break. Whenever we come back, we're going to see how quickly Brisco can turn those liners around. In all likelihood, we'll talk a little more draft stuff. Then we'll talk more about it with Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest coming up in 10 minutes.
At JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Whenever we come back, we'll talk about football. That's a promise that we probably will not be able to live up to. That's next.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We need to all measure our arms. I just want to know. We got to put this into context. Credible Hulk on Twitch said, "Well, I know why I only made it to D2, 30-inch arms. Imagine seeing a 6-foot-tall O-lineman in the NFL." I want to know. I don't think I got a great wingspan. You know, I think I could keep, but I think I could keep. I think I could keep Tucker off me, but I don't know. I'd need to bring up my high school era forearm pads that I was rocking. Why did any coach ever teach you to block with your forearms, by the way? Like, that's not pretty early on, but that's not good technique at all. I did keep the forearm pads for a long time, though, because I ended up covered in splotchy bruises and whatnot, and I kind of liked the idea. I liked being able to just throw those suckers around with no consequences for myself. But it's not good. This is the
shoulder blocking.
Forearm is not. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's bad. Not
good technique. It's probably why I didn't go pro. And not my 9-inch arms. I'm a literal T-Rex. I've got my hands, which are normal size, and then just basically that much more space. You know who I bet has legitimately, maybe borderline Andy Reid qualifying arms? Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. He is taller than you'd think, and I bet his wingspan is longer than you'd think. We'll talk to Matt Derrick about his wingspan whenever we come back.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
A reading from the Golden...
Those sporting events in the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota have been postponed either this afternoon or tonight. This following the police shooting of Dante Wright last evening. The Minnesota Twins postponed their game this afternoon with the Red Sox. The Timberwolves did the same for their scheduled game tonight against the Brooklyn Nets. The Minnesota Wild followed suit with their game against the St. Louis Blues. Wright, a 20-year-old black man, died after being shot by a police officer in the suburb of Minneapolis called Brooklyn Center following a traffic stop. Wright was unarmed. Brooklyn police have called the shooting accidental. Tensions are already high in the city due to the ongoing trial of Derrick Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged with the murder of George Floyd. A short time ago, Minnesota Timberwolves president of basketball operations, Gerson Rosas, was a guest with Sarah Spain and Courtney Cronin here on ESPN Radio.
It's devastating. This market has gone through so much in the middle of a trial, and for this to happen again, it's just heartbreaking, and it impacts everybody, not only our players, our staff, our organization, but our city. And, we're all tired of this. We're all tired of seeing this. This is a great market. This is a great place. There's great people here, but it's so sad that this continues to happen.
Minnesota Timberwolves president of basketball operations, Gerson Rosas, on ESPN Radio just a short time ago. Follow ABC News on Twitter for all the latest developments in Minneapolis. As for basketball games that are going on tonight, game one of an ESPN television doubleheader, the Sixers carry a 12-point lead at the half in Dallas, 60-48. Big night for Joel Embiid, already 23 points. Knicks and the Lakers. Knicks are up by 6 in the third quarter. What's up, Freddie?
We're back on Tuesday, and it's Russ or bust for one NFL franchise not named the Seahawks. We'll tell you who that is and why they're out of options at the quarterback position. Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, Tuesday morning on ESPN Radio.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Oh, no. His measurables.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We'll talk about something vaguely Chiefs-related right now with Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. You can follow him on Twitter, @MattDerrick. You can read his work at ChiefsDigest.com. There's also a book about the time the Chiefs won a Super Bowl. Don't know if you remember that, but that's still available. TriumphBooks.com/ChiefsWin. Could have been a second book. Could have been back-to-back. Could have been Ran It Back. We may have covered this already. Did you have a title plan for the book that doesn't exist, Matt?
Yes, it would have absolutely been Run It Back. Because what else would it have been?
I think I would have gone Ran It Back, but I think for the title of the book, Run It Back would have worked. It's fine. You can take notes or not on a book that doesn't currently exist. My memory is we've already established on this show, and I've established in real life many times. My memory is terrible. Was there like a chapter at one point that you had teased you might release? I'm trying to remember what it was and what it was from.
There've been a couple. I put the picture out of the hashtag anything is possible.
Yes.
Chapter.
Is that going to happen? Can we get that on Chiefs Digest soon? PDF form?
I suppose we could probably do that. I could probably make that work.
MattDerrick.com.
I think. Did that get renovated? I don't think we had ever said that URL out loud on the show, Beards. I feel like we had let that hide behind a curtain for a while.
I'm pretty sure that I put a dagger in that one. So
let's see. Yeah, it's right now. I mean, it still says MattDerrick.com, the unofficial home of Matt Derrick, which I effing live for. But then it's just just a little Twitter widget. No more PR and marketing tips, which really bums me out because this is where I was getting all of my good PR and marketing tips.
all your great PR advice from 9 years ago.
The about page is still there, so just so you know, you can get there if you'd like.
You can see me, a picture of me on the streets of New York City.
Is that where that is?
That was from my old PR days, and I was taken on one of those, 95-degree days in New York City that are just absolutely so enjoyable.
Just a bright, shining face in this cold world. I just love it. I love MattDerrick.com so much. But we were talking the last couple of segments as I was looking for a tape measure around the studio, and I can't find one.
Do you want me to go find one?
If you think you can find one, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because we would like to measure.
I bet you I've got one in my car.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at you, handy dandy boy. We've been talking about measurables and arm length, And I was saying that I'm pretty sure that you would have, if not quite Andy Reid offensive lineman length arms, that you would have surprisingly long arms for most people that know you through radio and the written word.
Yeah, I probably do, because if for no other reason than, back in the days when you had the presidential physical fitness.
Yes.
And in my day, one of the tests was flexibility, which, if anyone has seen me recently, they would say flexibility is probably not one of the skills in my toolbox.
Right.
They would say that.
Right.
But I aced the flexibility test because it simply measured how far you could reach beyond your toes when you reached forward. And my arms are long enough that even though I'm not very flexible, I can get that done. I can still get that done.
I think you might get drafted in this year. I think this might be the year. I make sure you got an agent and that you're in the pool of eligible players and whatnot, because you are taller than I think most people listening or reading your work would just assume. You've got the height there, and I think you've actually told me that story before, but I forgot about that. You have apparently even longer arms than your height would indicate, which means, again, you may be more qualified to play tackle in the NFL than like Samuel Cosme.
I mean, I admit I don't know exactly where they measure from and to and everything, but I just took a tape measure, and I was measuring from my armpit to the tip of my fingers with just holding the tape measure. And I did come to 33.5.
I'll tell you what. So Tucker is in for Rudy tonight because Rudy's under the weather and probably trying to stretch out his arms right now because I'm sure he's listening. Beard, did you find one?
No, I did not.
Disappointing.
I'll go in my car later.
Tucker, can you explain from the photos you look at where you think it's supposed to? Because I thought armpit to fingertip made the most sense, but you feel like there's something else going on here.
Yeah, it's not easy to find pictures of arms being measured, but in the pictures that I've found, it's like prospects with their arms out like the wingspan would be.
Right.
But they also measure it from their back, which I found also very odd. And their palms are facing forward, but it's from like the divot in your shoulder to the tip of your longest finger.
I would like to just get a video of you asking Nancy to come measure your arms from the back.
Now, I will say that just doing that and putting the tape measure in my hands and kind of, it's not great, but even just to my shoulder blade, I'm hitting 33.5 on that one at least too. So
yeah.
Back, I think I might be able to crunch at least 34.
That would be huge. I mean, that would be an absolute needle mover. I expect that I'm not going to have terribly long arms, but we're going to try to figure this out over the course of the show. So I'll ask you the outside of the arm measurement question, the other question that I've continually been sort of shuffling around. We've had varying versions of this conversation since free agency opened and since the Chiefs apparently barely missed out on Trent Williams. They tried to take the biggest swing available to them at left tackle in free agency, and since then they've just been watching pitches. Not that there's another Trent Williams caliber guy there, but they made the replacement level move with Austin Blythe. They made a depth move and a competition move with both Kyle Long and bringing back Mike Rimmers. All of that, I get it, but left tackle has been absolutely silent, and we're 2 weeks removed from the draft right now. So how do you feel about the position as a whole right now, and also specifically what the Chiefs have been and must still be planning?
I mean, as just purely an outsider, and not, with any special insight. I mean, it's not like, Brett Veach lets me into the room or anything, much as I like for him to.
I think if he knew you had 34, if you could get those arms at 34.25, I think he might let you in the room.
Yeah, he might actually let me in the room if I gave him some measurements. So maybe I should do that.
I think you should.
But I mean, I kind of felt this way after the Trent Williams swing and miss, and with some of the things that happened, and increasingly with the radio silence in the left tackle market that we're seeing. I mean, I have felt now, I'm more convinced that Brett Veach believed that the best upgrade the Chiefs could get was Trent Williams at left tackle, and the second best was probably the draft.
because, I mean, one, there wasn't a lot of great depth in the left tackle free agent market as it was anyway.
True.
And, and frankly, I mean, if I were going to, start pulling some names, the guys who would be the most likely, frankly, the two guys that are still left are probably the two guys all along who would have been next in line. But, Alejandro Villanueva and Russell Okung both have flaws. They're not ideal solutions at all. I mean, I've somewhat been convinced almost from the very beginning that the Chiefs feel like that there is somebody in this draft that they love, that they've fallen in love with the film, that they think is great, somebody that they think is reachable, somebody that they feel that they can get by not necessarily having to move up to 10 or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone in this draft that they love. I don't know who that is yet. I could be completely wrong, but that's the sense from everything I've seen from what this organization has done over the last, really 6 weeks. It convinces me that they feel like that there's somebody in this draft that would be the second best solution to that position.
So, I mean, this is not a counter to you thinking that is the case. It's help me work through this as my concern with that, if that is true, right? My concern, if that's true, isn't that they'd be relying on a rookie on the left side, although that is somewhat concerning. The concern for me is that they're not doing that from the 5th spot or the 10th spot. They're doing it from 31. And, let's say they love, I'm looking down the board a little bit. Like we've talked about Liam Eichenberg on this show. He's probably, he should theoretically be there at 31, relatively pro ready by rookie measurements. But if some team 5 spots up really likes him quietly as well, do they feel that way about Samuel Cosme or Jalen Mayfield or Alex Leatherwood or any of those guys? I would think that it concerns me if they love one guy that they're pretty sure is going to be there at 31. That to me is a little scarier than them like loving the whole crop of guys who could be there at 31. But I don't know. Do you think is that a differentiation that you think that they're making that you would make, or are you thinking right now that they are just going to hope that their guy is there at 31, and if he's not, then you have to make some other plans?
No, and to me, gettable and 31 are two different things. Because and I've said it before. I mean, because I feel like the left tackle spot is one of those positions that if you feel that if you trust your scouting, which you should, and your scouting tells you that there is somebody who is a solution at left tackle for the next 6 to 10 years for your club that can be a Pro Bowler, frankly, you go get him. I mean, even if you have to go 31 to 10, I mean, if you feel that strongly in a player, you go get him. But, one thing I think that Brett Veach has done a reasonable job of is measuring what other teams are looking for and where they're going to go. And that's why, I mean, I feel like that if the Chiefs feel like there's a player that they like, this is a player that they think maybe is not going to be a top 10 guy. Maybe he's a top 10 guy on their board. But it's somebody who, hey, you know what? If he falls to 23, maybe that's when you go get him. I mean, you could certainly make the argument that if you get a top 10 player on your board and it's 16 or 17 even, you go get them. But, the real key is just figuring out where teams are going to go. Because remember, with Patrick Mahomes, they did that perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have to go up to 2 to get Patrick Mahomes. All they had to do was get 10. That was the absolute perfect spot. 11 wasn't going to get it done. They had to get 10, and they didn't have to go any higher than that. So, yeah, I mean, if there's a player, and maybe we're probably all maybe surfing in the right direction. This is a guy that was generally projected to be maybe a late first, early second kind of a player. If that's the case, then, yeah, I mean, I think you can reasonably feel like the Chiefs are going in with a good plan if they're thinking to themselves, okay, you know what, if we have to move up 5-10 spots to get this player, we'll do it. And once again, maybe they feel good enough that this is a player that's going to drop to them. I wouldn't be too concerned about, frankly, a rookie coming in to play left tackle because they do it all the time. And the Chiefs are probably pretty well prepared for a left tackle to come in because they're putting an experienced left guard next to them. Everybody else is experienced. I mean, that's not a bad problem to have. So I think it can be done. It's just, once again, I mean, is that the case? 1. 2, is that player gettable? And 3 is are they right?
Yeah. What do you think the second biggest need is at this point, as things currently stand with the roster?
I mean, as the roster currently stands right now, I would say that to me, 1A, 1B, 1C maybe, because 1A is definitely tackle. I'd probably put it as 2A and 2B. I'd say it's receiver and edge.
Yeah.
I mean, even the addition of Darren gives them at least a little bit of depth and the possibility to move some guys around. I still think that they really could use a primary edge rusher opposite Frank Clark that they can develop, especially for the future. And frankly, right now, I mean, I think the Chiefs are loaded in number 3 receivers. It's just, the question is, do they have a number 2 receiver?
Yeah. I think that's a good read on it, because that's the thing where bringing back Demarcus Robinson on a vet minimum deal, fine with me. You love Byron Pringle? Sure you do, and I'm happy that you do. McCole Hardman, he sure is fast, and I like having fast players on the roster, but you're right. This team has, and I guess depending on how you want to categorize Travis Kelce, it feels like they have 2 number 1 options, and then 2 or 3 number 3, number 4 types of options. And I've thought that's really been extremely interesting. Honestly, whenever I saw Julian Edelman was released today, I wasn't sure. I didn't know it was going to lead towards retirement. I wasn't sure if those medicals might end up coming back a little cleaner in a while. And I'll keep doing this for every receiver that hits the market, because we've seen the Chiefs splurge to have that secondary or tertiary pass-catching weapon, because they did it for Sammy Watkins. Even last year, even after it worked kind of it worked all the way to the Super Bowl, but he dealt with injury issues, they could have just moved on from him. They would have had to have still had a lot of dead money, but they ended up restructuring with Sammy Watkins last year and to keep him around and all of that. I've expected Brett Veach to do the Brett Veach thing and double down on another pass-catching option for Mahomes, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that even going back, when they signed Sammy Watkins, I mean, a lot of us thought that was a luxury signing. I mean, you've got a team here that had a lot of wideouts. So, why do you need to go out and at the time give Sammy Watkins one of the biggest free agent contracts ever for a receiver? Why do you need to go out and do that? Well, I think he made it pretty clear is that he always wants this quarterback to have some weapons. Mm-hmm. And especially earlier in his career, he wanted to surround him with as many weapons as possible just to make the transition to becoming a starter and becoming a star in this league a little bit easier. But I still think, that originally the plan was, hey, you're always going to surround Patrick Mahomes with weapons. Now this offseason, you're added we're always going to have to protect Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that diminishes the fact that they still want to surround him with weapons all the time. So, that's why I think that, getting a receiver this year in the draft, I mean, I think is also even a little bit forward future thinking, because, you've got Tyreek Hill, who is going to be a free agent after next year? Mm-hmm. Last year in his contract. So you got to be prepared for the possibility that you don't have Tyreek Hill forever. Yeah. You still don't know what you have with McCole Hardman. Demarcus Robinson, I think, is what he is. But, you don't have that necessarily pipeline in the future. So, yeah, I mean, I think receiver, somebody who could step in and contribute this year but be a number 2 or even more in the future is high on the list.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see. So would you say then the expectation that first pick goes tackle, and then just the next time they come around, if they're moving up, maybe it ends up being slightly later than their current, I think it's 62 overall. Is it just a best available edge / receiver? I'm, and this is the thing that makes me a little uncomfy, right? Like whenever you have positions that you need more than you have players that you really like, it's how you end up trading up for Breeland Speaks, because you're afraid to miss out on a certain class of defensive linemen. I don't know. Do you share that concern at all at this point?
I don't have that concern because I don't think they're in that spot. I mean, I don't feel like this is a situation where you say, you know what, Chiefs are completely hosed if they don't get a receiver and they don't get an edge rusher. I mean, I think those are the next 2 biggest needs for both now and in the future. But I don't think it's anything that you're talking about mortgaging the future on to make sure that you come out with somebody. Because You're right. I mean, that's how you make bad picks. I still feel like that the Chiefs are in a position with their roster where it's at, outside of the left tackle spot, that I think they can afford to stick to their draft plan and go with the best available player. I mean, cliche, but I don't think that there's any reason. I mean, if you got the 63rd pick there's no reason to take your 95th best player on the board just because that happens to be an edge rusher. I mean, if the crowd goes and those guys start going away from you, I don't think there's any reason to reach. I mean, I still think it's just trust your board and go with who you think's the best player for your team.
Did you think it was interesting at all that the Chiefs were, on some level, interested in Giovanni Bernard before he signed with the Buccaneers?
No, you know what? It never really surprised me for the most part, some of the players that the Chiefs get interested in. Because, one, I mean, if it's an offensive player, they're going to be interested in anybody they think is going to make Patrick Mahomes better and can help out. And, obviously we've seen, the running back spot. I mean, you've got to have in this league 3 or 4 guys you think that can play. So, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
That's how I feel in terms of looking at it, Giovanni Bernard in a vacuum. The one thing that I think is kind of interesting is that they cut Damian Williams for cap space that currently hasn't gone anywhere else. It still certainly could go somewhere else, but they let him go. It was a $2 million cap hit. I don't know if there's contract details for Bernard to Tampa. I don't know if the Chiefs had offered him anything, but I kind of assumed that they were going to try to ride out Williams and still have Clyde and still have Darryl and then have Darwin Thompson and maybe compete with an undrafted free agent they bring in. And I figured they would continue to work on like the stable of running backs or whatever. But if they were interested in a vet, I would have just thought you would keep Damian Williams around. I don't remember if we ever even really talked about that whenever they released him, but I don't know. That's the only other element of that I thought was sort of curious.
Yeah, I thought it was a close call, but I was leaning towards the likelihood that just because he was so inexpensive that Damian Williams would be still around.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the argument's against. Okay, he's coming off a year away from the game. He has never been able to give you a complete season. I mean, there's always been at least a little things here and there that slow him down. And, yeah, he's played a few snaps of special teams, but, Damian Williams is going to be your number 2, number 3 running back. He's got to play a lot of special teams, and that's not who he is.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I could see that, the Damian Williams, I mean, even, he and Giovanni Bernard, I mean, both, I think, 29 at this point, both very similar, but I think as far as who they are as players and what they can do to your team, yeah, Bernard probably is a better fit right now than Damian Williams.
I think it's interesting. I'll say that at this point, any veteran piece of pseudo news is kind of interesting because I also thought Melvin Ingram was interesting, and then they had him in, and then it was quiet, and it's we're just in this weird little void section of the offseason where I don't know. Should we be expecting something else to happen before the draft, or should I just accept that this is the roster, and then we'll see if anything changes post draft?
Well, we've been talking about it from the very beginning. This is the most unusual free agency period that we've ever seen. Yeah. I mean, it's even more bizarre than last year. There really wasn't much of a second wave, and by now, we would really be expecting a lot more activity to have happened. And there's still some interesting players out there. I think at this point, though, if you look at the cap space numbers that the teams have when calculating the fact that right now it's all just top 51, and that you've got to be prepared for a season when you've got practice squads and you've got the full 53 and you've got an injured reserve, teams just don't have a lot of cap space left. So, and then you've got players, on the market who, and maybe we're talking about the Russell Okungs and the, Alejandro Villanuevas and the Melvin Ingrams, who maybe believe at this point that they are $10 million plus a year players. There's no team, I think, at this point that's really in a position to give those players that kind of money. So I think you got a lot of players in the market right now who want more than teams are willing to pay. And if that's the case, then I don't see a lot of teams probably making a lot of moves until after the draft.
What did you think about Juju Smith-Schuster saying that Andy Reid was texting him pictures of the Lombardi Trophy in an attempt to recruit him, and that if he wasn't going back to Pittsburgh, he would have come to Kansas City?
I think that every NCAA coach should just be lucky that Andy Reid's not recruiting in college. Because if that's all he had to compete with was, just, getting the best kids and didn't have to, worry about salary caps or anything like that. Yeah, Andy Reid would be getting every 5-star player in the country. That's just a baller move.
It's so good.
That's just baller. So the only thing that surprises me about it is that Andy Reid's such a humble guy.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't expect him to do something quite so, braggadocious, but he did it.
Here's the thing that I think this is gonna sound rude, and I really don't. I think I'm gonna save it, but just so everybody's aware, we hear all the things we hear about Andy Reid and like playing for Andy Reid and everything. I would not say that comes through in your average press conference with Andy Reid. He's not like a grouch or anything. He's just given us coach speak, and he's a dude that's been at a podium 100,000 times over the course of his career. Like, he's just spent a lot of hours at podiums, and so he doesn't give us. We see more of Andy Reid in the sanitized 20-second videos that get tweeted out from the locker room by the Chiefs social media team than we do in the 20-minute long pressers oftentimes, I think, where the content can be good, but it's a very different situation. So I thought it was a very fun look at Andy Reid whenever a player that is not currently playing for him got to tell a story about what he's like in the recruiting phase. I just thought that was, because like I imagine there's some of that with Nick Saban too. We hear it all the time about players who play with Belichick. It's just, I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, and and not many people, I don't think, that certainly outside of his players and people who are close to him probably get to see the real Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I think we get some glimpses, and I think we got more glimpses a little bit after he won the Super Bowl.
Definitely.
Of the true Andy Reid, because the true Andy Reid, if you talk to people who are close to him, they all tell you he's funny, which he can make some jokes at the podium, but funny is not necessarily the first word that I would use to describe Andy Reid, based on his public persona.
Right.
But that's usually like one of the first things that people tell you about him, and and that he is very caring and kind. That he gets involved with the players and knows about them and their families, and we'll ask them about those kinds of things all the time. But you know what? I mean, he is, I believe, a humble guy, but he knows that, what players like, and players like swag.
Yeah.
So he knows he has to show the swag every once in a while.
I also thought it was interesting as another reminder of how hard the Chiefs were in on Juju, because, I mean, we knew that they were there with the money, but I think that once you get to the point where Andy Reid is picking up the phone to do the recruiting himself, I'm not sure it changes anything. It should change anything, but that as another little reminder that they really did, like, that was a very legitimate pursuit from all angles. I think also probably plays into the wide receiver conversation we were just having a minute ago.
Yeah, and and frankly, I mean, people are saying that maybe the Chiefs are losers for this year's off season because they took a couple of big swings and didn't get them. But frankly, I mean, the Chiefs, if Trent Williams had not basically given San Francisco, the right of last refusal, they were getting Trent Williams. I mean, they made the most competitive offer. They were getting that deal done. And if Juju just didn't want to go back to Pittsburgh for one more year, they were getting that deal done. So I don't think there was anything within their control. And two, I think that it also shows that the Chiefs were being fiscally responsible as far as the cap goes, and that they weren't willing to spend more than $1 more than they thought they needed to get those players. But they were willing to, hey, let's put in a little value-added benefit here. Hey, here's a Lombardi trophy.
Yeah. Since we ended up over on this level, I want to at least get, before I let you go, just a minute on the Britt Reid development from today. He's been charged with the DWI in Jackson County. We got a few more details from the crash and all of that. I don't necessarily think that you've got extra information that we need to get, but I want to at least bring up if there's anything there that you think is important to note, if anybody has missed out on the story, or maybe something that you've seen that perhaps could use clarification in your mind, or maybe we're good as is.
I mean, I don't think that the information that we learned today makes the situation any easier to swallow. I mean, I think it unfortunately probably fits with a lot of the expectations that we had based on the severity of the injury, the situation, the circumstances around it. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all give anything for this to have not happened, and that family and that little girl to be in a better position than they are. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. But I don't think there's anything that we learned today that makes any sense of it or makes us feel any better. I mean, I think it's just confirmation that Britt made a terrible, terrible mistake, and he's going to pay for that. I mean, I think that's going to be, I think, very something this community is going to want to see, unfortunately. And because you hate, as a I guess a God-fearing person, many of us are, and everything. Trying not to be vengeful, but obviously, this is a situation that I think the community expects there to be some punishment, and I think there will.
Yeah. I realized we'd gotten pretty much the end of the conversation and hadn't even mentioned it, so that I'll leave it at that, and I will continue to make an awkward segue from Juju Smith-Schuster doing TikTok dances with the Lombardi Trophy to that very serious story, back out to a commercial break, because that's something I continually just walk right into and never get better at. So at the very least, you can blame it on me.
It's amazing that you have such success with relationships, given your incredible segues.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it would be, my segues alone, I think, would be grounds for a text after this segment. Is, hey, listen, Josh, this has been great, but I'm going to choose to no longer grace this show with my services. I wouldn't even hold it against you. I'd be sad, but I would, I'd go to MattDerrick.com, the unofficial home of Matt Derrick. I'd learn some tips about public relations, and I would, probably go work on a new career. Because after you turned me down, what would even be the point anymore?
But Josh, I will always grace you with whatever I can.
With your 34-inch long arms, you will grace this show whenever possible. Thank you, Matt.
I'll try and get an exact measurement for you for next week.
That would be great. Also, during the break, Beards did go find a tape measure from somewhere, so we're gonna have to get some measurements around here. And I would love to know. Yeah, I think Beards, put your eyebrow back down. Beards raised an eyebrow at me in a very suggestive way. Put your eyebrow down, Beards. You heard me. We're gonna get some measurements, all right? And then Matt's going to blow us all away. Matt's going to absolutely crush this, and we're measuring arms, everybody. Arms.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that the last time I measured, I think my wingspan was 78 inches, but I could be wrong.
That's pretty good, right?
Legit.
That's pretty good.
Legit.
I feel, man, I think we're going to find out. We got to put you through a whole combine, because I think we get you, at least whenever the XFL comes back around, maybe we get you a deal. We just get you a tryout. I feel like, how's your kick slide right now? Is it good? Quick feet?
No. My foot speed, my quickness, terrible. Although, the first time I ever met Brett Veach, I did try to get him to give me a weight bonus. Because I told him if he gave me 25,000, I felt like I could get under 320.
I think that's good motivation. Yeah. Did he follow up on that, or?
I don't think he thought it was as amusing as I did. So.
Wow, that's really disappointing, honestly. At the very least, you got to be amused. That's a pretty good joke. Anyway, all right. I thought it was funny. Thank you, Matt, for being here with your freakishly long arms. Good luck in the draft. We'll talk to you well before then as well, though.
Take care, Josh. Thanks a lot.
Follow him on Twitter, at Matt Derrick. It is Matt Derrick of MattDerrick.com, of Chiefs Digest, most importantly. He's probably set up MattDerrick.com to redirect to Chiefs Digest, because then we could just start sending people to MattDerrick.com. But go to ChiefsDigest.com. Follow him on Twitter, at Matt Derrick. Great coverage of all things Chiefs news, Chiefs analysis. Got longer arms than the rest of us. And we'll take a break whenever we come back. Maybe we'll have some arm measurements. You can watch during the break on Twitch, maybe. Try to figure this out. I'm afraid I'm going to have freakishly short arms. That's currently my biggest concern.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcast. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I wonder how far you could throw a baby. Feels like a fair question, right?
It's not going to be a perfect spiral, I can tell you that much.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, Beards, turn on the mics and get in the studio at your convenience.
Yeah, let me set up the camera.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to at least have Beards and Tucker measure each other's arms. And then we'll see where we're at in the commercial break. Because I want to know. I want to know the answer to this question. Also, Michael on Facebook asked a question that I figured I would answer while we wait for this to all come together. Something about Antonio Brown coming to Kansas City. Here's just a rule of thumb that I'll throw out there is that if the only place of reference for something is Chiefs' Facebook page, don't worry about it. just don't worry. Don't even worry about it. Like if it gets to Twitter and you see somebody that you have, that has reported a thing before, or even if it's just somebody who's successfully heard things before, I'll take it. But if it's just on Facebook, don't worry about it. I haven't heard anything about Antonio Brown in Kansas City, other than some wishful thinking, I guess. Beards, you want to talk on the microphone? Make sure it works?
Yeah, I'm good.
Excellent.
It's on.
Okay.
I turned it on.
Beards is here in the studio.
With the
Tucker's here in the studio. We have a tape measure. Let's measure some arms. Tucker, why don't you measure Beards' first so I can see?
Yep.
'Cause you had you were looking at technique.
Yeah, I need to pull up my reference images.
Okay, pull your reference images back up because I do want to know. Again, Tucker's got sort of the most strength and conditioning coach vibe out of all of us, I think.
Fair.
And I think you should know, Tucker, how to measure arm length. So we'll have this
I think I can do it.
aspect of our combine right now.
All right, here I go.
Beards, why don't
The thing is on
you?
the bottom to hold it in place for whatever reason.
It says Justice on it.
It does.
I didn't even know Dick Justice had a tape measure. Oh, it's probably Jason's.
Arms out.
Arms out.
So, okay, so Beards is currently that statue of Jesus in Brazil, stretching out to his middle finger.
30 and a half.
30 and a half for
Okay.
Beards'
30
arms.
and a half.
So-
no chance I'm hitting that.
So, where did you put the end of the measuring tape then, Tucker?
So like the pointy thing.
The pointy thing.
The pointy thing, I put it. Pull out your arms again so I can get another reference. Like at the bend. You see?
You're going up to the seam of his hoodie, basically.
Well, just a little past it, because it's like the bend of your arm back.
Visually, it's great. Auditorially, it's confusing. All right, Beards, why don't you do play-by-play? I'm going to let Tucker measure my arm.
Here, I'll switch you.
Did you do both? Measure both arms.
Oh,
Measure
okay.
both arms. Are they going to... Maybe you got one... I'll tell you what, if you find out that I have a shorter... One of my arms is shorter than the other, I'm going to be really upset.
I was trying to measure that when you were. Oh, this one is shorter.
Really?
This is like 30 and 7/8.
So you got 30 and
Okay.
7/8 and...
I'll take it.
Not
30
30
and a half.
7/8. 29 and 7/8.
29 and 7/8 and
30 and a half.
and 30 and a half over there.
Okay. That's fine, yeah.
I
No,
feel like
you're
there's-
going Josh.
I feel like there could be some user error on this one.
Hey, you know what?
We're not perfect.
Mask off, everybody.
Oh, I probably should have put my mask on.
Get your shots. Wear your masks. We're in a tight.
I'm gonna wear it like every college basketball coach wears their mask.
Yeah, just right on your neck.
Okay, here
All right.
we go, Josh.
So go.
Spread them.
Ah.
Give me that palm out. There we go. 29 and a half.
Give me the left one. I got this one's 30. I can feel my left arm's 30. Got 30 inches.
Oh, I about snapped my finger out of her. That one is shorter.
Really?
It's 28 and a quarter.
Measure my right arm again. I'm gonna really
Reach for it
really
here.
reach for the stars.
29 and a half. That's what it was the first time, right?
That's what it was the first time.
Yeah, that's 20.
All right, let's see if we can get Tucker's here.
At least I'm consistent. Can I have a
So-
guess?
Sure.
I'm going 28.
I think you gotta kind of flatten your palm out a little. There we go. So we feel right here seems about right.
Yeah, sure.
That's gonna be 27 and a quarter.
Oof, there's a reason I played center in high
You
school.
are-
There is a reason that I was a center.
A lineman in the middle of the line. This one's a 27 even.
See?
Good radio.
Great radio.
So what was Matt's?
34.
He could play.
Matt.
He could play straight up.
Well, hold on. Beard, I need that for one other thing.
Oh, okay.
Matt's measurements were impressive.
So, I mean, his arms are 7 inches longer than yours?
Yeah.
He could slap you in the face.
And I couldn't touch him.
And you wouldn't even be able, you would not be in the same zip code.
No. Nope. Yeah.
What do we think is average? You can just pull the camera up, Beards. I'm in that. Listen, if Pat McAfee can make millions of dollars standing up and doing radio, so can I.
25. The average human arm length is 25 inches.
What? There's no. What about, is that, can you find the length of an arm of the average, like, American man? No,
Oh.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get to our, because I don't know if that
It
changes
says 25.
around the world, if that's men and women. Do women have shorter arms? Because women are probably statistically slightly shorter than men on average.
Well, I would like to consider ourselves
Did you hear all the
young
conviction
men.
I had in my words on that one being true? That was the least I've ever committed to any take ever.
This is from reference.com. I'm going to continue to do radio in a mask.
It sounds fine, actually.
No, that's interesting. The length of the average human arm is 25 inches. However, the length varies because 25 inches is the average for a young man with the average height and health, which would make sense why it would be an average.
That's right. Honey Makes Me Happy on Twitch says, don't use the seams, it's not accurate enough. I was trying to really kind of get in there and try to get basically pit length, but also there's a chance.
It's like past the seam.
There's a chance that. Here's the thing is, I'm just not going to put my hand in either of your guys' armpits. Like, I feel like this is a pretty good radio bit, and I kind of like, trying to figure out how long all of our... Beards, you have the longest...
Yeah.
Beards' right arm is in first place, I think.
And I think my left arm as well.
Okay. I'm not afraid of you.
I tried to reach as hard as I could, too, and I only got 27.
You're really trying to... Well, you know what? I'm starting to think you can't stretch your bones, is what I'm starting to feel like might be a reasonable development on this story. More at 11.
For reference, I'm only like 5'7", so... Imagine if I had like 30-inch arms as like a 5'7" young man.
You would look very strange.
You're an orangutan at that point. That's...
I like to think that my body's pretty proportional.
Sure.
As to my size.
I've never thought that Tucker, he's an unproportional fella.
Right.
I've never thought he's a proportional fella either. Because I just don't think I've ever thought that about anybody,
I've got a long torso, and like Matt was saying, I was very good in the sit and reach because my legs are really short. I've got short legs, so when I was basically going up against the little, the little blue thing and has the little legs on it, and then you sit and my hands were pretty much at the table already, because I think we've done radio in this studio before where the chair's too high and my legs start swinging.
Yeah, I lower the chair to have my legs be like just actually planted on the ground, which is just a more like my back gets sore. Right now I got my knees bent. Right now I feel like if Beards and his long ass arms came after me right now, I'd whack those suckers away. I have no concerns at all. I'm fine. I'm not even worried about it. Can we just get a cut on Tucker? Can we just get the camera on Tucker doing his little...
Boom! Right there, right in the chest. Boom!
There's a violence there, man.
I got good hands.
I wouldn't want to be head up against Tucker.
I mean...
You'd be a little rascal in the middle of that offensive line. I feel like you'd be annoying. I feel like you'd get really annoying in the fourth quarter. I feel like you got that motor that just doesn't quit, You got those hands. Those hands they're just always ready. I feel like you don't want that mess by the fourth quarter.
I know exactly where my huddle highlights are, so we can pull those up.
If we could make those work for radio, I would do it in a heartbeat. We can't, so instead we'll take a break.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app and 810WHB.com. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
You can hear Tucker talk about Chiefs stuff on the Roughing the Kicker Chiefs podcast. New episodes every single day. You can also read his work on Arrowhead Report. Follow him on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. The D, of course, stands for Dick. His middle name, Richard. His middle name is Richard. Is that not true? What's your middle name again?
Douglas.
Nah. But you
You have a strong name. Tucker Douglas Franklin is a strong, strong name.
Tucker, you could have just gone along with it. You didn't have to be a Douglas about it.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
There's a new comment from Kyle on the Twitch feed that does remind me of something that I think is important that we take some time to talk about. Kyle said, I really hope I haven't missed the Julian Edelman Hall of Fame discussion. You haven't. You have not missed it. We should talk about it because things have gotten silly. Warren Sharp tweeted this. Love Julian Edelman, but compare his career to Hines Ward, who can't make the final ballot in Hall of Fame voting the last 5 years. Catches, Hines, 1,000. I want to call him Julian so bad. I don't know why. I'm reading it as Julian. Julian, 620. Yards, Hines, over 12,000. Julian, a little under 7,000. Touchdowns, 85 to 36. Super Bowl MVPs, 1-1. Pro Bowls, 4-0. None of those stats were in favor of Julian Edelman. Seth Kaiser tweeted this earlier, and it's blown up, and I'm worried for his mentions, but also he deserves it because this is the way he lives his life. Tyreek Hill has 17 more touchdowns than Julian Edelman and has been playing in the NFL for 5 years. This tweet, now I'm going to refresh. This tweet has 91 replies and 384 retweets. Oh, no. I'm unfortunate. This is unfortunate for Seth's mentions. Let's see. There was one other one I wanted to read from somebody who used to be beloved and is now no longer. Quote tweeted this tweet from Will Brinson, who said, Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne are not in the Hall of Fame. Stop with any Julian Edelman to Canton talk until they are. And then this person who perhaps was sent to a swan song tweeted, I would say Reggie Wayne's career is Edelman's on steroids, but Julian Edelman had some PED issues. We just don't need to do this. Just every time a player retires, we don't need to have this conversation. It's okay. It's okay to just go, boy, that dude was a really good football player. So long, and thanks for all the touchdowns and vandalized cars. What? And muffed punts in the AFC Championship game that you totally touched. Maybe. You don't. There are great players who aren't Hall of Famers. Hines Ward should be. I feel like that one's surprising to me. I would have Hines Ward in the Hall of Fame. Feel like I would probably have Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne in there also, but also probably pretty free flowing on wide receivers for the most part. Somebody tweeted compares numbers to Anquan Bolden. I bet Anquan Bolden has better career numbers than Julian Edelman. But like, I think Anquan Bolden was great, and I also don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Probably, I think Larry Fitzgerald is obviously. I'm thinking back to that Cardinals team specifically. And Anquan Bolden is going to be the guy who had a really incredible NFL career, and at one point I think played with with his jaw wired shut. There was something crazy with Anquan Bolden in a jaw filled with nettle. I'm going to look that up. Tucker, do you have a Julian Edelman take?
Well, I was just talking to you before we started the segment, and I just said, where's the line? We got to draw the line somewhere. And I think Julian Edelman is a good place to start drawing this line. Not everyone can be a Hall of Famer, contrary to the Basketball Hall of Fame, what they like to do.
Basketball is on one end of it, baseball is on the other.
Yes, that's very true. But also, I think they do need to be a little bit... I think football has it right in terms of accepting players into the Hall of Fame. But Julian Edelman is not a Hall of Famer. That's my take on it.
Bolden suffered a jaw and sinus fractures that required surgery. He refused to take painkillers while recovering. That one feels dumb. Just do that. 2 games and a bye week later, Bolden was back and he caught 9 passes and scored 2 touchdowns in his return. His jaw was broke and he had sinus fractures and he played 3 games later.
Don't need a jaw to catch touchdowns.
If you're Anquan Bolden, I guess, I think I would. I think I need a jaw for everything. Let's see if we can do some quick math here. Anquan Bolden career stats versus Julian Edelman career stats, which I think is his name permanently now.
Who?
Julian.
Who?
Leon.
Who?
Leon Edelman.
Who?
Career catches for Anquan Bolden. 1,070. Boy, he did have 1,000 catches. That's crazy. That's closer to Hines Ward. Yards. I'm in his playoff only section, which isn't that helpful. Almost 14,000. More than Hines Ward. Touchdowns. 82. A little less than Hines. Significantly more than Julian. We do a ton of playoff stuff like that. Oh boy, I'm glad I didn't remember this until just now because it would have been the whole first hour of the show and it would have sucked. But there was a really terrible, I think it was an outside the lines take. I think it was Jeremy Schaap tweeting about not drafting quarterbacks highly. We might get to that tomorrow. We might get to that later. I don't know. It was awful. But we really don't measure players by rings unless they're quarterbacks until we get to Hall of Fame discussions. You're like, what if Julian won so many rings? And they're like, that's not how you pronounce his name.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sports Radio 810.
NBA tonight, New York Knicks picking up their 28th victory of the season. Or at least they will in 11 seconds. They are going to beat the Los Angeles Lakers 111-96 tonight at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks started the night in the 8th position in the NBA's Eastern Conference playoff chase. A win tonight gives them 28 victories, which would be right about in a tie for 6th. Game's gone final. Julius Randle, 34 points, 10 boards for the Knicks. 111-96 is your final. On ESPN, 2 minutes to play. Philadelphia leading in Dallas by 15 points, 106-91. Joel Embiid having himself a monster game, 36 points, 7 boards for one of the top candidates to be this year's NBA MVP, at least the betting favorite, according to Caesars William Hill. Sixers with the win tonight will go a half game up in front of Brooklyn. The Nets were supposed to play in Minnesota this evening against the Timberwolves, but that game, along with the Twins-Red Sox game this afternoon and the Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues game, all to be played in Minneapolis, all were postponed. This after the shooting death of 20-year-old Dante Wright yesterday at the hands of police after a traffic stop. There's ongoing tensions already in the city of Minneapolis with the trial of Derrick Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd last May. And tonight, despite a curfew being in place in the city of Minneapolis and in 3 counties, there's a whole lot going on. Log on to Twitter at ABC News for the latest developments that are ongoing in Minneapolis. Game 2 of the ESPN television doubleheader will be Denver visiting Golden State. Utah right now hosting Washington, down 4 in the second quarter.
Tuesday, one of my favorite things. It's a mock draft day. Mel Kiper tells you who he sees going in rounds 1 and 2. We're breaking it down from every conceivable angle. With me, Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I think today was not only a weird show, it was also at least okay.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
This show today has predominantly been about arm length, draft prospects. I don't know. Rudy's not even here to make fun of his Nuggets, which would have been a lot of fun because the Celtics ended up. What was that run, Beards?
It was like a 31-3 run into the fourth quarter.
I think it ended 40-8.
It also ended Jokic's career because he was on the side. Dude, some of those pictures are tough. Where he is it is like Where's Waldo, but Waldo is a very tall, slightly flabby MVP candidate. And he is nowhere near the huddle. We can't even talk about that with Rudy because he's not here today. But I'm here. Beards is here. Tucker D. Franklin, former in Turchin, current little Chiefs boy, deputy editor of Arrowhead Report, host of Roughing the Kicker. He is here for in the Rudy chair for the duration of the show. I feel like I probably should have reintroduced you at the top of last hour, just more often because you're not Rudy. And you also have the shortest arms in the studio right now.
27-inch arms. That's bad. Andy Reid wouldn't even sniff me.
Do you want Andy Reid to sniff you? We'll see if we can get some extra wingspan in the show now. Aaron Ladd of 41 Action News joins us now. You can follow him on Twitter at AaronLadd0. Aaron, do you know how long your arms are?
No, but I'm currently measuring them in hopes that Andy Reid will sniff me one day. One day we'll get there, but I don't think I have the arm length.
I think if you get the 31 and a quarter, Andy Reid might sniff you. I think that at least a tackle. I don't know if that extends to other positions and everything. I've never in my natural life at any point have I ever given any cares about arm length. And it has legitimately become something that I've had to become an expert on over the course of these last couple of weeks, Aaron, because that is the stage of the football offseason that we're in. That's where we're at.
I don't even know how you guys pretend to even care. Like, I'm a draft guy just because I have to be, but you can't get me up and excited about the underwear Olympics and all these immeasurables and the Wonderlick and the hand size was another one for a long time too, right? It's like, oh, this guy's got small hands, so I don't know. I mean, just come on, right? At a certain point, the eye test has to take over, and you go from there.
I'm curious, then what have you found yourself having the hardest time? I could be literally anywhere throughout sports, because I this is an honest show, I like to think. This is more or less a safe space. There are a lot of things in the sports world that I find myself caring about significantly less than most of my peers. What jumps to mind? What's your leader go, you know what? I'm going to pretend to care about that for the time I'm on television. And then after I'm off television, I'm going to go back to not caring about that very much.
Wonderlic is definitely one of them. I mean, I was never great at standardized testing.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I told you all my ACT and SAT scores, you would look at me a little differently. So I don't even look at that when that's put in front of us and we look at that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff this time of year that you really decide if it's smoke and mirrors or if it's actually something that we should buy into. I'm glad to be in a safe space where I can just tell you how much I don't care about half of the stuff we have to go on and report about. As I'm typing up my show right now, see you guys tonight on 41.
You turn on 41 Action News. What time are you on tonight?
10:22 if you want to skip through all the non-important stuff and get right to the sports. 10:22 and you'll see my smiling face.
I knew you would know it to the minute because TV's just different, man. That's the biggest thing. I did a sound off with Aaron at the helm a couple of weeks ago, and Annie Rogers, new Royals beat reporter, I felt genuinely bad because she was doing that show as one of the guests with me and Jason Anderson as the other two. And it felt like bullying just because Jason and I have radio lungs and we were in TV spaces. If we break at the same minute twice in any given show over the course of 3 hours, Beards would absolutely pass out dead. And on TV, you're up at 10:22 tonight.
Yeah, and between you two, I could see Annie just kind of shriveling underneath the pressure of, oh my gosh, I'm not able to talk as long as they are. And I'm like, no, it's all good. They are just blowhards who talk as much as they can about all this stuff that doesn't really matter. You're okay, I promise.
Yep.
Look at you scaring off the new folks, man. We can't do that. We got to indoctrinate them.
Yeah, no, I didn't. The issue, here's where it really becomes a problem, is if I was doing that on purpose, then you should scold me for it. The issue is just my natural personality and the way that I talk about things. And that makes existence for other people more difficult, which again, I'm not proud of. I'm just mostly self-aware about it, I think.
I'm never bringing up Chiefs or anything next time you're on the show. Exclusively Casey Woso from now on out.
I think I'll listen. You give me 5 minutes, and I'm gonna come up with a 3-minute long take. I need 5 minutes to come up with a 3-minute long take, and I'll be fine. And just ask me, what are your expectations for K-State basketball next year? And then at that point, I'll go, I don't know, man. And then we'll move. Then somebody else can talk. I don't know. We've talked a ton of Chiefs over the course of the show tonight, partially because it's the thing that we're all interested in. And I really can find myself, maybe not for the Wonderlic and for hand size and for arm length and everything, but I do enjoy, even as I like free agency more than the draft because I pay more attention to the pros that are moving than I do all the college prospects. But I like draft season for what it is, which is an inexact science and some gambling and waiting to see how the mock drafts fall and all that stuff. But the entire scope of the Chiefs offseason so far, I think, has been really interesting. And now we're here on April 12th with a couple of big question marks remaining. What have you found to be the most genuinely interesting thing from these last couple of Chiefs months?
I think the overwhelming, when is the big move going to happen, right? You scroll through Twitter and you scroll through and listen to what a lot of the fan base is hoping for, and they're waiting for Brett Reid to swing for the fences. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. It hasn't happened as of yet. The draft's still over 2 weeks away. We don't know if it's going to happen. We know that this is a franchise that has taken big swings in the past. Is this the offseason where they feel like they have to take that big swing again? Or maybe this is an offseason where they do a little bit more fine-tuning. I would love to see where the Brashad Breeland saga ends.
Yeah.
That's somebody that I was hoping that would come back to Kansas City. But as we sit here on April 12th, that's still a question mark along with many others.
Breland is funny. I think I said this on the show last week. Like, if you asked me, hey, quick, where's Bashaud Breeland? I would have gone, oh, yeah, he hasn't signed anywhere yet. But just somewhere in a background process of my brain, I just sort of assumed that he had re-signed with the Chiefs on a 1-year deal because it just seemed like borderline predestined to happen after he didn't get picked up in the first wave of free agency because that dude's been trying to get a multi-year deal since he lost the one with the Panthers with his whole, like, foot infection and all that stuff. So that would have made a whole lot of sense. Are you worried at all about the fact that the left tackle spot here a couple weeks ahead of the draft has been totally like that's just one spot where they haven't done literally anything over the course of this offseason other than, of course, like cutting Eric Fisher on the left side?
I mean, you got to be worried. I think the big thing is we have this huge sour taste in our mouth from the last time we saw the offensive line unit out there and what the stakes were at that point in time. So now everybody's waiting on this next move as if it's going to correct the last thing that we saw last time out. And it doesn't necessarily work that way, right? We're not going to get a Super Bowl winner in free agency. You got to wait, give it some time. I would like to see what they do with the draft, but it's going to be a mixed-match bunch. Considering how much attrition they had last year, the starter on day one is not necessarily the starter when you go into postseason play or the starter when you're playing in the divisional round, knock on wood. You'd like to see as many names in there as possible that give you a good chance of feeling healthy. I know Patrick Mahomes would like that as well, considering how much running he did in Tampa Bay. I think he's still running all the way to Augusta. So it worries me, but I'm not the person who's pulling the strings at the end of the day, and I think he has a little bit better idea than I do.
I wanted, partially because we have Tucker here. We also had Matt Derrick earlier. This is a very Mizzou-heavy, Mizzou-friendly edition of this show tonight. And, I've paid some attention. I just wanted to know if anybody still plays for Mizzou's basketball team.
Honestly, if you could hit a three, we would get you a walk-on potentially. That's the point that we're at now. I think this is a good thing for Conzo Martin, right? I mean, we saw what the ceiling was for that year's team. They were never the 10th ranked team in the country, even though they were slotted there at one point in time. Cool. They exited in the first round, which is something Mizzou fans are also accustomed to at this point in time. Now he gets to kind of rebuild through this supercharged transfer portal free agency bonanza. He brings in guys that make them more athletic. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for him, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for Mizzou as well, as it gets easier to get away from Conzo Martin if that's the side of Mizzou fandom that you end up riding with. Currently, who knows what they look like, but they're trending in the right direction, which is better than what we could say for the Commanderson era, which unfortunately was how I kicked off my Mizzou career. Actually, my first Mizzou game as a student, they lost to UMKC at home, and I'm hearing "Whose House, Rue's House" ring out through Mizzou Arena, and it's been a fun fandom ever since then.
Yeah, boy, that sounds like a really, very kind entry point. That was stunningly optimistic, by the way. Like, I am floored that you have so many generally positive, optimistic things to say about a team that I mean, good on you, I guess. I don't think I've heard anybody be that. Tucker is shaking his head right now. Go ahead, Tucker. How are you feeling? Are you feeling good?
I'm just a naturally pessimistic person. So once I saw Xavier Pinson into the portal, I said, everything is falling apart. And once I saw Kansas was in his final two, I said, this is the worst thing that could ever happen in my whole entire life. And but he went to LSU, so I guess I'm fine with that. But I don't know. I just don't feel great about it.
I'm speaking from a Mizzou fandom, Mizzou reporter that knows the ceiling realistically. You're competing in the top 5 maybe in the conference. I mean, considering how deep the SEC was this year, you maybe lose 4 or 5 games in conference every year. The goal, considering where you came from, because we have to remember that, right? History influences our future behavior. We came from the Kim Anderson era. Within those last 5 years, you've made a marketed improvement. I guess the next goal now would be to win a tournament once you get into March, right?
I would say, or even just like, this is definitely a moving target, but like sustained moderate success would also, I think, be a real breath of fresh air, because that's how you change expectations, right? Like you get a ton of teams that have a year or maybe 2 years where you go, wow, if it's Loyola or if it's the year of VCU or if it's, I'm trying to think of a better team that has had more kind of, or a bigger team, I guess, that's had kind of a blip on the radar and then it's disappeared. Even if you're like Villanova, right? Where you have where you're the absolute best team in the nation a couple of times, where you're up in that contention. And then at the very least after that, what were they, a 6 seed this year or something? Like just feeling like you're gonna be a tournament team by default. I think that would move the needle a lot. Beard's just said Butler. Butler would also qualify kind of in that space, I think. I don't know. And that seems like that should be achievable for Mizzou, I feel like. But I don't know. Maybe I'm asking for too much then.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you consider facilities, you consider where you are in the country as far as recruiting-wise. You should be getting guys that are from St. Louis and Kansas City, that you're at least in their top 5 when they put out the graphic or whatever. And I think Conzo Martin has done a better job of establishing that. I mean, just a couple years ago, guys in St. Louis and Kansas City, they're not even thinking about Mizzou. Maybe they'll put you in as a courtesy, but at least now you're in the conversation. Yeah, you lost a couple games this year that you probably should have won, but as far as sneaking in, as far as name recognition, I think they almost did that this year.
Yeah. I also, by the way, just remembered that not only is this something I haven't pretended to care about, I think I'm about to say for the first time, the Masters are just now. That was the first time I've mentioned that golf tournament over the course of the last several shows. I just don't. I know a guy broke his putter because he spiked it into the ground and then had to putt with a different club. And then the first men's Japanese golfer won the Masters for the first time. That's what I know. That, and I just can't be bothered beyond that.
I think this year was very low drama, very low investment. You didn't have the Tiger factor that draws in the casual fan as well. And we just had a Masters like 4 or 5 months ago.
That's true.
So, you're right. There's another thing where there's not that nostalgia where it's like, oh, it's been so long since we saw the green. No. We just had that. So, I mean, when you're reigning champ, this is the cut, and there's really not a lot of dramatics on Sundays, and you kind of get that, right? I kind of feel you as well. I was stuck watching it just because force of habit. It's kind of what you do when you're a Georgia boy. You watch. Mm-hmm. But I feel you on that. It wasn't anything where it was appointment television this year.
I saw somebody tweet about maybe like a collapse or a choke job on I think it was, I don't know, 15 or 16. And I turned it on then to try to figure out if something terrible was going to happen. And I kind of just was tuning in for, I almost said the car crash. And that would have probably been a poor turn of phrase given the Tiger not playing situation. I was turning in to see if there would be some sort of golf chaos. But if it's not chaos, I've never made the turn on golf. We've talked about things that we don't care about. What have you found interesting across the sports world in the last couple of weeks? Is there something you go, you know what? All right, that maybe I didn't think of that caught my eye, or this thing is interesting to me, even though the Masters and Wonderlicks aren't.
Yeah, this is going to hop on my Atlanta Hawks soapbox, so please excuse me while I get up top.
Okay.
I believe Nate McMillan should be a contender for keeping the job and removing his interim tag. I know there was a lot of controversy on whether Lloyd Pierce should be removed as Atlanta Hawks coach, especially considering how instrumental he was in a lot of the voting rights movement and getting that city involved, especially with Stacey Abrams. And he changed the arena into a voting and polling place. So very controversial when he stepped down. Ever since he left, Nate McMillan takes over. They're 16-5, a lot more ball movement. Trae Young's not holding the ball 24/7. You get Clint Capella involved. And they're the 4th seed in the East. When you look up at it, this is a team who had expectations of making the playoffs. Now they're a team that could be having home court advantage in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I think Nate McMillan deserves a little bit more recognition, not only for Coach of the Year this year, but possibly keeping that job long term. I know that's not extremely local.
Doesn't matter. It's a good take, and it was also an NBA topic that Beards couldn't have possibly been expecting to hear on this show at some point. Beards loves the NBA more than he loves almost anything else. I would say it's in this order: fried chicken, his fiance, NBA, and that 1, 2, 3.
Ooh,
I think that's
fair.
I think she knows that's fair. I don't think there are any delusions there.
Over the NBA, that's bold.
I mean, I was trying to do Beards a favor, honestly. I think, and then bad video games is 4. Is that
how dare?
Yeah. So that's crazy because I had seen the Hawks record that somebody had tweeted about it it got to my timeline at some point earlier today because I remember seeing that McMillan was had met with the previous coach, and you mentioned all that nobody had anything bad to say about the previous coach whose name I've also now forgotten. This is where I'm at.
Lloyd Pierce.
Lloyd Pierce. Thank you. Isn't that an actor? It's an okay joke. Don't worry about it. And that they're but the actual schematics of it had definitely turned sour, and they've been great. There you go, everybody. There's an Atlanta Hawks nugget. Did you see that coming tonight? No, you didn't.
Not the Denver Nuggets.
No, because they're not going anywhere. They're not making an appearance other than to make fun of them. That's a fun one, Aaron. I like that. Here's just an absolute cannonball that you can either hop right back out of the pool on or swim around a little bit. Your call. But I forgot that you were. I guess I don't know. Are you originally from Atlanta?
Originally from the Atlanta area, Falcons, Hawks, Braves, all the lovable losers.
And then to Mizzou, and then the little news rotation. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I got sucked into the journalism school.
Right, which feels like. Also, hold on. You said maybe we'll get to the MLB moving the All-Star game. Maybe we won't. You said your standardized test scores were not good, but you got into the Mizzou journalism school. You did some work there.
I really think it was a clerical oversight. I think it was that, or maybe somebody greased the wheels to get me through. No matter what happened, I'm thankful. Really thankful.
That's good. Yeah. I wanted read your. You have to write a entry letter or something. Maybe you really had a tearjerker. Maybe you had some real power there. Maybe they saw through. Maybe you had some great a great sizzle reel. It's got to be something. There. Anyway,
definitely, we'll do some digging.
I'd like to find your Mizzou application sizzle reel, which is something that I imagine exists, and I bet it's incredible. But Atlanta sports have been maybe the most interesting national thing outside of your beloved Hawks, because of baseball moving the All-Star game and the draft out of Atlanta, and the Braves then put out a statement. I thought Bomani Jones he talked about that for a while and had a video and also a tweet. But we talked about that on the show whenever it happened. If you haven't seen it yet, simply the dichotomy of the Braves' relationship with Atlanta and not really being in Atlanta, and MLB's decision, and then you have the Masters in Georgia shortly thereafter. It's all been fascinating, and last time we talked about it, someone on Twitch got very mad at us, so you can do whatever you want with it, Aaron. People will get mad at me, though, either way, so you're safe.
Perfect. I think there's a couple things here that make this extremely interesting. The first thing is that it is in Atlanta, right? This is a place that in our last two elections has really been a battleground for kind of changing political views in our country. We had the runoff election that decided those extra seats. We had the presidential election that came down in Georgia, where Georgia flipped blue for the first time since I don't even remember when. The fact that this is something that is again happening in Atlanta is something I think that is almost poetic justice. The Major League Baseball moving their All-Star game, it is performative at the end of the day. There's no real change, quote unquote, that's going to come of this. But it sends that message. It sends a message, in my opinion, that it shouldn't have gone this far, right? We saw all these statements in reaction to George Floyd's killing, where all these big Fortune 50 companies are saying, Black community, we stand by you. And we can't believe that there's companies here that would do these sort of things to you. We're going to do everything that we can to find out who's committing these acts of racism. It's almost a slap in the face when that happens and then they stand by and watch laws like these enacted in their own time. So Major League Baseball's decision to move the All-Star game, in my opinion, was a message that said, hey, Coca-Cola, hey, Delta, hey, Atlanta Braves specifically, it shouldn't have gotten to this point. You should use your power and influence when you see these type of things happening instead of just typing up whatever performative press release. Actually put your money where your mouth is. And it wouldn't have gotten this far. If you had created such a media storm previously, maybe the game would still be in Atlanta. So who knows? Congratulations to Denver on getting the game. It's cool to see that people got so riled up about it because in effect it did create even more of a bigger media storm. But it's a shame that things are going on, and we're going to have to talk on a different platform about Governor Kemp and some of the other things that are going on in Georgia.
Yeah, and that's been a fascinating little obstacle course that really, I mean, for the last year and change, around the beginning of the pandemic through all of the Black Lives Matter protests and through George Floyd, I mean, over the last year and change, just that the balance of where and when and how much can we talk about all this stuff has been very, very, very interesting to me. Because here's the thing, like, there are people genuinely tweeting about sticking to sports when talking about Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game, which I just think is sort of the height of a unself-aware comedy. But with that caveat being said, like, you're absolutely right that it is a performative move for baseball, and that they were doing some math somewhere. They decided, hey, if we keep the game there, will we have players and even managers talking about boycotting the game? Is that going to be a bigger deal? Can we move in a way that's going to give us a smaller total headache, but also maybe we get to put out something performative and on behalf of a cause that we want to put our name behind and all of that? But it's that does all still stack up. Like it all does accumulate to the point that at the very least you're having that conversation once again about, hey, now what exactly is it that made baseball move the All-Star game in the draft? What is it that they're objecting to? What is it that's caused all of these problems? And also, why did this bill get introduced in the first place? And what is it based on? And nothing. Oh well, that's buck wild. I don't know. I find that all super interesting, but it also ends up being a minefield. So I don't know.
Absolutely, and these sort of topics are everywhere we look now. I honestly am starting to feel bad to stick to sports crowd, because there really is nowhere you can turn on SportsCenter or anywhere these days without seeing something like that. And did you want people to stick to sports, or you don't want political views opposite yours that are entering your sports? Or what is it really? Because we have to have these conversations at a certain point, or else we're going to continue to have these instances like this. And if you're uncomfortable now, it's going to get even more uncomfortable.
Yeah. What have you made of that then? Of the way that sports media has? Because you're right. The funniest thing for me, I'll pick a specific example. For like the Dan Le Batard show is obviously on ESPN for a very long time, and then ended up leaving ESPN with the beginning of the year, somewhere around there, and is now independent. They're figuring out their next steps. The funny thing to me is that many, many times Dan or that entire crew ended up getting in some form of trouble from ESPN for wading into really race issues more often than not, like politics, lowercase p, not partisan politics. Anyway, they got in trouble a number of times, and then they unveiled this whole new national lineup that is just it's just sports, and Le Batard's in the middle of some more sports. And then the landscape of sports media changes over the course of this last year in a way that all of the people that got put into place to strictly stick to sports end up seeming very in over their heads, and the chemistry of sports media fundamentally changes in a way that obviously some people are supportive of and some people are critical of, and that's going to happen with any form of anything all the time forever. But I don't know, what have you made of it from a very like sort of navel gazing media focused aspect? Because I think it's been probably one of the most interesting times in sports media history.
I think you hit it right on the head, and it doesn't even have to be this race politicized stories that grab the headlines. I think, like, even looking at the Deshaun Watson story right now, we have no idea how to really report on these things and talk about these things. Well, was it a consensual thing that now is it he said, she said, or is he completely innocent? And you have guys, former athletes, who come on and say, well, I know this guy, he would never do anything like this. It's like, whoa, slow down. Like, how are you reporting on this? How are you talking to people in these situations? You don't know anything about this. These are situations that are far removed from you and I having conversations. It's just like, we really need to take a breath and understand that you don't have to have an immediate reaction once you read a headline. Like, I know that's what everybody wants to rush to, and I see this tweet, I immediately react. It's push send, but there's room for nuance, and that's something that I loved about Dan Le Batard that you mentioned earlier. I mean, he understands that there's gray area in a lot of these things, a lot of these stories. There's extreme room for gray area, and even somebody who believes, well, I'm always going to say the sky is blue. In a certain situation, the sky might look a little different one day, and we need to give ourselves some opportunity to take a breath, realize that people are coming to us not just for instant reactions and stuff and how they feel and supercharged and emotional responses, but the truth and how things should be reported honestly when you look at all the facts, and not just race stories and that sort of thing, but there are stories that involve women. There are stories that involve Asian Americans. We saw the Asian American attacks and a lot of the Stop Asian Hate movement that's going on right now. It's another thing that happened in Atlanta. It's got to be exhausting to want to just go down the sports avenue, because that's such a narrow, focused lane that truly leads to nowhere.
We can either try to wrestle with all of that stuff or talk about Wonderlic scores. Like, those are the two things that are on the table. And I think at the very least we've probably made our case for I'm done with Wonderlic scores for. Did we get Wonderlicks this year with no combine? I don't think I've seen or heard anything about actual Wonderlicks this year. So there you go. Maybe that's the trade-off we've all had to make. Aaron, thank you very much for making time for us tonight. Sorry for keeping you so long. If you want to check out Aaron on TV, 10:22 tonight on 41 Action News, KSHB. You can follow him on Twitter at AaronLadd0. I look forward to someday talking to you, not over Zoom or a phone, but for now, this will have to do. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate it. See y'all soon.
Aaron Ladd of 41 Action News. Again, you can check him out tonight on 41, 10:22 on Channel 41 here in Kansas City. Follow him on Twitter at AaronLadd0. I enjoy talking to Aaron. I've gotten to chat with him a couple of brief times now, but again, he got to Kansas City right as everything was sort of being a little bit less so. And so glad to finally get him on the show. Also, here's a little breaking news in the sports adjacent world. Arizona Senate. Everybody nervous yet? Everybody nervous? Hey, you guys scared? I said the word Senate. Arizona Senate just passed sports betting bill 23-6. Will now head to the governor's desk. The governor is expected to sign it into law. There we go. Can we just? I was gonna say, can we just do that? And I think the answer is essentially yes. It just gets into partisan politics. Can we just get sports betting and weed just everywhere? And I just feel like everything would get a little better. Wouldn't everything get a little better just as a nation?
Be a whole lot cooler.
It would be a whole lot cooler. You should listen. If I could sit at home and order food from DoorDash, and also, I guess, weed from DoorDash. I don't know if that technology is going to be here anytime soon. And then also, most importantly, for this conversation, place bets on how many runs the Royals are going to lose by on my phone. That seems like a good weekend. I can't be alone in this. By the looks I'm getting from Beards and Tucker, I'm feeling very alone in this. You guys are cowards. You guys are afraid. You guys are scared. I should have just kept asking Aaron more questions about the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe you guys would have gotten, maybe you two would have been happier. Cowards.
I met Aaron one time.
You've met him in person more than I have.
Yeah.
Was he like a real jerk to you?
He's a really nice guy.
That would have been very funny if you would have sat there in silence this whole time. You're like, yeah, I met Aaron in person one time. Real dingus, that dude.
No.
Really rude. Very rude person.
High school football game.
Were you rude to him?
No, I was not.
Hard to say sometimes.
Yeah. I can come off as a real jerk.
I did see on, where were we at here? Where were we at? Chaotic Warrior said, having you both in studio on Twitch is a real conundrum. Which one of you does James Corden play in this scene of the Lifetime movie? Beards has said that Tucker gets Corden and that I get Josh Hutcherson. I definitely used to, but I haven't seen Josh Hutcherson in a very long time. And I feel like that was a decent comp whenever whenever the first Hunger Games came out. And I looked more like Josh Hutcherson.
I think you're the guy from Stranger Things. I can't think of his name right now.
Which guy from Stranger Things?
The older, the not the kids.
None of the children.
None of the children.
None of the children.
But the sheriff.
I was Hopper for
Yeah.
for Halloween.
That's
yeah.
probably why I'm coming up.
Probably.
With that, but yeah.
Probably. He's also like
Hopper.
45, so it's a tough look.
Mm.
That's a tough one for me. Here's the thing: if I look 45 forever, I'm gonna be a smoking 70-year-old. You know.
True.
It's all about perspective.
True.
I just want to be hot when I'm old. You know. Who doesn't? You guys want to do power rankings whenever we come back?
Sure.
Power rankings with Tucker D. Franklin next.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Tucker, what's your number one type of ice?
Vanilla.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Beards, I don't know if Tucker has heard the relevant thing from the Cart Express that liner connotes. Can you grab that?
Yes.
I don't know if Tucker knows it. He may know it.
I'll save it for later.
Just because we're gonna forget. It's gonna be so confused. You want to save it for the end of the segment?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
You know what we're talking about, Tucker?
No idea.
All right.
Zero idea.
All right, then save it. Then it'll be funny if we save it.
I need to edit it anyway. It's a little quiet.
Can't you just pot up the?
Well, no, I need to edit the file so that it's always louder. It's very quiet right now.
Can you edit the file?
Yeah, I can bump up the audio.
That system that was made on this side of the millennium really was better than the old one. Yeah. I knew how to run the old system.
What's the number on this?
Well, I don't know that anyone listening knows either, so Right into the mic, Beards.
I know.
You just let them know.
Yeah, I know.
Let's ask the whole audience. Maybe they know what number it is.
SP13. Edit.
I mean, we can. In the meantime,
Gain. Bump up that game. Let's put up like 6.
you can do the gain in that system. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so
It
much
only goes up
better.
to 6 though, so I guess that's what I'm bumping it up by.
That's fine.
I
Can
did
we
notice
just?
there's a new system. I didn't say anything, but I did notice it.
It's
very much better.
yeah, and for Beards to say that is a BFD because Beards doesn't like change.
Right.
He was not happy with this system at the beginning. There were a lot of wars.
Yes.
And Beards has fought a lot of wars with the old system also, but the new system really did it for him. Can we make this last segment of this show, Beards? Can we power through the end of the show tonight?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's plan on it. We're not gonna have
I'll give you that time a sec.
That's fine. We can just roll with it, but I'm making that call executively right now because I want to have time to do our power rankings with Tucker D. Franklin, president of Power Rankings. You can follow him on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. He's a former intern and a Lil Chiefs boy, deputy editor of Arrowhead Report, and again, most importantly, president of Power Rankings. Let's rank some things. Tucker, not only are you the president, you're also in studio right now. Why don't you tell me which category of our 3 today you would like to start with?
Specialty TV.
Wow, you're going really
Well, we were very heavy sports.
That's a great point. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Specialty TV channels. Top 5. We'll go in a circle, some sort. We're going to rank them.
This is a weird-looking circle, let me tell you.
It's more of a triangle. It is a cute.
Why, thank you.
You guys have to. I'll tell you what, man. The most
Hi,
I've ever.
Rudy. It's glad to see you're back.
The most I ever felt like Rudy was back in that chair was you two making the same joke at the same time, slightly differently enough that it was totally impossible to hear. Beards, what's your number 5 specialty TV channel?
Number 5, ESPN.
Yeah.
Good analysis.
Yeah, that's all.
My number 5 specialty TV channel, HGTV. You can watch Bargain Mansions with our friend Tamara Day. Also, last time I watched HGTV, I was literally getting a tooth drilled. But it was kind of nice to just watch, they fix up a house and I'm getting the cavity removed. It was great. Tucker, number 5.
ESPNU. Only college sports there. Get to see, amateur athletics at its finest.
Yes, for the love of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you're going to do the thing that I almost did. I had a bit that I almost did that was going to start with ESPNU. I'm very curious to see how this plays out. Beards, number 4.
Number 4, Cartoon Network. It's solid. It's been around. Yeah.
Yeah. My number 4, in fact, I'm making a late change in the polls. My number 4, Nickelodeon. I watched it the most out of the cable cartoon channels. Always there for you. Good branding. Now it's got football also. So Nickelodeon is my number 4. Tucker, number 4.
I'd investigate Discovery on there. Because
What?
the murder mystery channel, essentially. So Discovery Channel has like a bunch of its like own channels now, I guess. But they have like different channels, and this Investigate Discovery is just like true crime murder mystery stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucks me in. I was also watching like 3 different Datelines today, and the guy who narrates the Datelines is also the guy who like hosts. He's so funny with like the questions he asks, because they're talking about one time like, oh, she was a really good singer. He said, so she sings a lot. And it's like very dramatic in like places that shouldn't be. It gives me a good laugh.
All right. The murder mystery channel gives you a good laugh. A true crime channel. All right.
Yeah.
Beards, number 3.
Number 3, the History Channel. Sometimes you get some good documentaries about history stuff. Sometimes you get shows about why aliens exist.
It really does contain multitudes. I think that's a good call. Number 3 for me, PBS. PBS Kids especially was incredibly clutch throughout my childhood. But also, sometimes you get Cyber Chase.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get Zaboomafoo.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get Ken Burns.
Wishbone.
PBS number 3 for me. Tucker, number 3.
I've got Animal Planet. As a kid, I couldn't go to bed with without the TV on. Animal Planet was one of those channels that I would always have on, and it helped me go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for not having that on my list. Too late for me to make the changes I want to make, but it's a good one. Beards number 2 for you, right?
Number 2, Sci-Fi Channel. There's been some good shows come out of Sci-Fi Channel. There's some
Sharknado.
good stuff.
Name 3.
Name 3.
Name your top 5.
The Expanse Season 1, The Expanse Season 2, The Expanse Season 3. Then the other 2 seasons are from Amazon.
Number 2 for me, good old ESPN. It's a 24-hour sports network that is usually good. Like, it usually serves its purpose. I'll say that. I love NFL stuff. Sometimes I don't want to rewatch, a game from Week 11 last year. ESPN usually has live programming. I appreciate that from them. Tucker, number 2.
I've got the DIY channel. I like to.
Is that a
DIY
television channel?
Yes, DIY.
Did not know that.
And I think it's part of the whole HGTV type stratosphere. I can't remember who owns it.
Can we DIY a quieter fan for Beards?
I was wondering what that was.
Yep.
Anyway, I thought he was making peanut butter back there or something. The food processor.
grinder?
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got. DIY. It's part of the Discovery group of channels, and it just teaches you how to make cool stuff.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Beards, number 1 specialty TV channel.
Number 1, NBA TV. What else do you need? NBA all day.
I really like that leave your camera on there, Beards.
Oh, whoops. What?
Over your shoulder, you can clearly see the childhood picture of Todd Levo that is the background of that computer, and it's really excellent.
Very good.
Yeah, yours number 1 being the NBA TV. I would have bet hundreds of dollars on. My number 1.
If only there was sports gambling.
If only.
Sports radio gambling.
My number 1 is Food Network, baby.
I was going to say, don't say NFL Network.
It's Food Network, baby.
That's last.
It's got Chopped. It's got Cutthroat Kitchen. It's got more Chopped. During the day, it's got, that nice Italian lady and that other nice Italian lady. I don't remember either of their names, and they're both fine. But those competitive cooking shows that come out of Food Network, absolutely the GOAT of specialty TV channels. Tucker, number 1.
I had Food Network.
Let's go!
That was the channel that I would watch the most as a kid to go to bed to.
Yep.
So I'm like, why are they making a lamb sauce with 2 minutes left?
They're not going to have time. Quick, whip up a quick aioli with the ingredient you haven't used yet. You can melt that marshmallow fluff down a little bit, add something savory, add a little acid, add a little salt, make an aioli, damn it! You've got 37 seconds left, make an aioli! I love those shows, man.
By the way, if you can move a little bit faster, that'd be great.
Yeah, bleep off.
Okay, I'm just going to cut you off at the end.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
The other 2 should be relatively quick, in fairness.
Yes.
Let's do our last ones are going to be top 5 Chiefs draft needs. We're going to save that one for last.
Yep.
Top 5 combine activities, we'll say. And whatever that means to you is up to you. I'm going to go first. Number 5 for me, the interviews, where you really make your money. You really find out, unless you bleep it up and that guy's not on your team in like 2 years, which happens pretty much all the time. Beards, number 5, combine drill / measurement / activity.
Number 5, the 40-yard dash. It's fun to see guys that don't need to be running 40-yard dashes very fast running 40-yard dashes because it's funny. Also, Chris Jones.
I'm going to go also number 4 really quick because mine's the 40-yard dash. It's for all the reasons Beard said. It's guys who don't need to run that, and then also occasionally you get a little dingling that falls out. Tucker, number 5.
I've got Kyle Pitts measuring wingspan at 80 inches.
Woo!
That's a big old wingspan.
That's a big old wingspan. So the wingspan is whenever they go across your torso and everything.
Fingertip to fingertip.
Fingertip to
So they didn't just measure into
the blade.
Pits.
Oh, man. I walked right into that one.
Beard's number 4.
Number 4. The vertical jump. I don't know. I always kind of like vertical jump. Just in general.
I'm going to go my third one again. I'll have to catch up Tucker because my number 3 is vertical jump. It's how I can tell that they're really freaks, you know? We're like, they're not human beings like me because they fly. Tucker, number 4, I think.
Yeah, I'll go 4 and 3.
Okay.
Jalen Twyman had a 40 reps on the bench press, which is absolutely insane because that's 225 pounds repping up and down 40 times. Yeah. Speaking of another 40, Jason Oweh had a 4.37 40 as a defensive edge rusher. Those are some pretty crazy measurements from those guys.
Future Kansas City Chiefs edge rusher Jason Oweh. Beard's number 2.
Number 2, the broad. No, wait. No, I'm on number 3.
Beard's number 3.
Number 3, the broad jump, because I love it when I see linemen in the beginning of the game just broad jump into the other offensive line.
That's how it works. Tucker, what number are you on?
I'm on number 2.
My number 2 is the bench press.
Well, then I'm going to need to read number 2 later.
Because I understand how that works. Beards, what's your number 2?
Number 2, measuring hand size. Oh my gosh, it's so important. If your hand isn't big, you can't play football.
Tucker, number 2.
Stone Forsythe's 35-inch arms.
He's got some pythons.
Yeah, those are some long arms.
Beards, what's your number 1?
Number 1, it's the Wonderlic test.
Wow, you must have taken that segment with Aaron personally.
I always love it. It's funny.
Number 1 for me, measuring arm length, the most important stat. It's quarterback rings, number 1, arm length, number 2. Tucker, number 1.
Josh Matterbaby from Illinois. He had a 46.5-inch vertical, a combine record. Absolutely stupid to jump 46 inches in the air.
Say his name again because you crushed it.
Josh Matterbaby.
One more time.
Josh Matterbaby.
Nothing what's the matter with you is what you should have said there.
I was just going to say that it sounds like you're asking me a question, but I couldn't tell what it was. One more time.
Josh Matterbaby.
Not much, baby. How about you?
I don't like it.
Last category, Chiefs draft needs. I'm going to go first on this one, and I think Beard's going to go last on this one.
Okay.
We'll see. I've got confidence in Beards on this one for some reason. I don't know why. Number 5 for me, center. Austin Blythe is here to patch up a hole, but they could really invest in that more long-term. I think that's number 5 for me. Tucker, number 5.
Safety. Get a third safety, replace Dan Sorensen next year. That's what I got.
Beards, number 5.
Number 5, quarterback. You never have enough. Just stockpile on quarterback so that way nobody else can have them.
Number 4 for me, wide receiver. I was tempted to put this up a little bit higher on the list, but I honestly think that's probably where it lands. They'll survive without another one, but I'd love to see another receiver in this offense. Tucker, number 4.
I had tight end 2. We do have Blake Bell, but you can always upgrade. Blake Bell's a good tight end 3. Would be even better with, Tommy Tremble in there as tight end 2.
Well, a little Tommy. I'm trembling for Tommy.
Your tummy was trembling?
What? Number 4, Beards.
Number 4, I have fullback. No more Anthony Sherman. Who's going to take pictures of butts now?
The guy that the Chiefs signed like an hour ago. It was like last week. They signed a fullback. You want to get younger at the position.
We need more fullbacks. More!
Number 3 for me is an edge rusher. I don't think Frank Clark's probably going to be here more than 2 more years. Maybe just this could be his last one. Also, they're edge 2 right now. Probably Taco Charlton. Tucker, number 3.
Wide receiver is what I got. Pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Beards, number 3.
Number 3, running back.
I thought it was going to be number 1 for
Hopefully in the first round. Actually, trade for another pick to use in the first round on another running back. Why don't you? Triple running backs.
My number 2 Chiefs need left tackle. Obviously, for all the reasons we've talked about, you might go only number 2, Josh. We'll get there. Tucker, number 2 need for the Chiefs in the draft.
Edge rusher.
I agree.
Yeah.
Beards, number 2.
Number 2, trading the first round pick for a kicker.
You can't draft a running back with it.
That's why you trade for more first round picks.
That's a flaw in your plan.
Who needs Travis Kelce?
Number 1 Chiefs draft need for me, a top 5 pick to select Penei Sewell. That's what they actually need. The thing the Chiefs need the most in this draft is a top 5 pick. Tucker, number 1 Chiefs draft need.
Patrick Mahomes.
Beards, number 1 Chiefs draft need.
Number 1 draft pick, a kicker.
You already traded a first for a kicker.
But you get another one. We're going to be all kickers, all running backs, and all fullbacks.
And all quarterbacks. You did draft more quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's true.
Their team building strategy has really gotten convoluted. Thanks to Matt, Derrick, and Aaron Ladd. Thank you, Tucker D. Franklin. Follow him on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin for coming in and filling in for Rudy tonight. We're back at 8 o'clock tomorrow with Seth Kaiser. Until then, bye, Mom.
Hey, what's up? This is Vanilla Ice, and you're listening to Sports Radio 810 WHB.